Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Board of Selectmen meeting for March 8th, 2017. Board members, is there a motion to approve the agenda? Second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Libby, we have some announcements.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This meeting is being video and audio recorded in accordance with the provisions of the open meeting law. We have an ongoing announcement regarding a water main project that is taking place in the Prospect Street area, specifically Prospect Street, Atlantic Ave, Milk Street, Vesper Lane, Joy Street, Mount Vernon Street. And this project will be ongoing through May, middle of May, and you will notice if you're driving in that area that there's a lot of road blockages off and on. So just be alert to that. And there's one more announcement I wanted to make that came in after the agenda was published. We're having a public informational session next Tuesday, March 14th, at the Cyrus Pierce Cafeteria at 5 o'clock, and it's regarding the Nantucket Harbor Shimo Plus Area's sewer extension project. It's specifically designed for those who will be affected by the sewer project, who would be connecting, and we will be giving a brief overview of the project and answering questions from people who would be connecting to the sewer. So, FYI, and board members are more than welcome to attend if you want to.
Thank you. Is there any public comment to come before the board tonight on a matter that is not on the agenda? Yes, Erica. So we did a sound check just before the meeting, and
Should we have a test? But we shouldn't turn our head
just
as often as
hold it
some of us
up
might.
and or sit back.
Or sit back.
If I turn my mic on, you get a hum from Libby's. You hear it?
Okay. Is there any new business to come before the board tonight from any members? No? The next item is approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. We have minutes as noted, payroll warrants for March 5th and treasury warrants for March 8th. Those are approved without objection. Yes, sir.
On the minutes,
Yeah.
if you don't mind?
No, go ahead.
The draft minutes for February 15, I guess I'm just trying to test my memory or others. On item number, this is page 2 of 4, item number 2, talking about the trots and the waiver of the fees. And it says on this same, it talks about whether or not the waiver would be available to others in similar situations, and says no consensus was made. I guess I remember it slightly differently, that we had discussed whether or not others should be able to come and seek a waiver, and I thought the board was somewhat receptive to that.
I agree that I believe we agreed consensus that people could come on an individual, case by case. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I had, with that one, that's a change. I think that's an important change,
Yep.
because if I was on the road and read this, I might say,
Right,
gee,
right.
why bother?
Right.
And that wasn't the
Okay,
intent.
thank you. Any
I have
other?
one other
Yeah.
comment on February 22nd, on page 6 of 6, under committee reports. I just didn't get to this till the end of the day. We only had 550 pages in our packet, everybody, just so you can sympathize a little bit. I'd be happy, under committee reports, I think we ought to elaborate a little bit on the second line with the required hookups. I understand what they're trying to say, and I'd just like to add for the record correct that to say the required hookups to water mains if they're running in front of your lot, or something to that effect. And with the pleasure of the board, I'd be happy to work with Erica to get that in there. So I didn't have a chance to get that done before the meeting.
So with those changes, are the minutes approved? Yes?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no. Pending contracts, Libby?
Did you do the payroll and treasury already? You did payroll and treasury?
Pardon me?
You did payroll and treasury?
Yes.
once? Okay. We have a professional services agreement for the police department with Infrared Building and Power Service, Inc., $21,940, and this is for the replacement of UPS batteries, really power supply systems, I think, at the public safety building for dispatch probably and E911 equipment. And we have funding for that in a prior year warrant article. Professional services for the Marine Department, Crosby Yacht Yard, $35,000, repairs to the sewer pump-out boat, and this is funded through the Clean Vessel Grant that we receive annually. A couple of professional services agreement for Our Island Home. Signet Electronic Systems, Inc., not to exceed $15,000. This is for the replacement of one of the CCTV cameras at the facility, and we have funding for that in a prior year warrant article. We have a professional services agreement for Our Island Home with Seascapes Aquarium. This is a multi-year contract. I believe it's a not-to-exceed 3-year contract, $33,000, for maintenance of the aquarium at the facility, and we fund that through a gift account. We have a professional services agreement for Our Island Home with Citron Cooperman and Company, LLP, not to exceed $80,000. That is also a 3-year contract, Rachel? Yes. And that is for the accounting services in connection with the Medicaid and Medicare cost reporting, as well as the CPE, Certified Public Expenditure request that we do annually, and that is funding available from the Island Home budget. Lastly, we have an amendment to a service agreement. It's actually not for the Marine Department, but we're going to call it Town Administration with AGM Marine. It's to add a little over $25,000 to the existing contract to repair the Easy Street bulkhead, replace the Easy Street bulkhead, and we have a state loan for that project.
Questions from the board? Bobby?
What was the change order for the Easy Street bulkhead? And were we, from the original bid, are we in the number, Dave?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. DeCosta, the change order was to add a second whaler along the face that you see the scuppers that are mounted into. And what happened is that because of the elevation of the sidewalk, we had to add a second board there. It's well within the appropriation. It's a 2% increase on $1 million contract, and there's still a fund balance of $145,000, so it's well within the appropriation. The original appropriation.
And does that close out the project?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We're waiting for the final bill, but this is the final number. We're just waiting to process the bill.
I might want to make note that there's also a slight decrease.
There was there was an increase of $39,000, but there was a decrease of almost $14,000. We saved some money on the disposal of the old wooden bulkhead in the demolition. We saved some money there. So this was the net gain, and I told them that we didn't want to process a couple change orders. This is just the final number.
Any other questions from board members?
Not on this. I was just curious on, this is a question for Rachel, on the aquarium. Do they come once a week and service it and test it and all that? Because it seems like $11,000 a year for a 280-gallon aquarium seems a lot of money. I'm just curious what they do for that.
They do come by contract every 2 weeks, but when they come off cycle, they actually don't charge us for it. And the rest of it is actually related to fish,
Buying
coral,
fish.
food,
Okay. I didn't know.
and the
That's what I
salt
was
for it,
curious,
which
if it was
is all extremely
Buying fish and
high.
things, because saltwater
Yep,
fish
it's
are
all the
expensive.
incidentals as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from board members? Is there a motion to approve the
So
pending
moved.
contracts? Second? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no? Thank you. Next on your agenda is the review of the 2018 Capital Program Committee report that was made to the Finance Committee. This was on the agenda as a request from a member. So Christy Kickham is the chair. He's going to come up, and I hope you have had the opportunity to review the not only the summary but the entire report. It's the result of months and weeks of work, led, by the committee and led by our chairman. And I think Christy's going to give an introductory summary and then be happy to answer questions that you might have. So Christy, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to appreciate the invite to discuss our report with you. I think this is maybe a first, which is good, and look forward to doing this every year, and maybe we can do it a little earlier in our process. But we want to thank the town departments, town administration, finance department, department heads for assembling all the information and data for us to review and come up with our final requests that we've already presented to the finance committee, and hopefully you've seen our report, and happy to answer questions with you as well. It's a seven-member board. Spent most of the fall meeting with all the department heads and going through their budget and their capital requests. As well as we did, we matched up in teams of two, sometimes one, did site inspections of each department, which gave us a little closer look at each department's request. That helped us become more informed, which was nice. And we spent a lot of time with our own committee internally reviewing these requests on our own and finalizing, the information that you have there in your report. So I didn't know if there was any specific questions or anything else I can try to explain on the report.
I'll say I thought the report was pretty complete, and
Thank you.
wish you well in solving the critical flaws at the end. I hope that you guys stay on a lot of those.
I appreciate it.
Because some of that's pretty important. And
Yeah. I will add, I was on the committee last year for the first time, and this year is my second year. It's a pretty young committee as far as the members. And it's really a phenomenal committee. There's a lot of great.
I think the young was being underlined here.
Appreciate that, Chris.
Tenured. But it's a great committee. There was a lot of really thorough discussion with most of or all of the items. But through the process, we jumped in running, and as a new committee, we didn't have too much time to start off and apply criteria, policies and procedures, prioritizing from the get-go. Our plan is to meet and discuss those things internally so that next year we have a more polished process. We plan to be more informed at the start, going over what our debt service is. And, we have a lot more questions to ask, as well as the department heads having a better idea of what kind of angles we're going to be questioning them on. So that's important to us, and we feel that our process is going to improve tremendously. So as well as the 5 and 10 year outlook, we're taking a really good look at that as well.
Christie, I was curious, I'm not sure curious is the right word, but I guess I just want to point out, because I know our board has had some discussions about the Old South Road improvements and how they might be financed, whether by a DIF or some other mechanism. And in your report, there's a recommendation for $150,000 for Old South Road Fairgrounds Rotary. It's on page 10.
Jen?
Just to sort of point out that, depending on how the plans for this whole artery develop, you might well have a request for $2 or $3 million next year. I was a little surprised that there wasn't more this year. But that's the only item that was requested related to that?
That was the only item that came to us. We respect that other boards and committees and staff are looking at these requests. And as far as the Old South improvements, that's basically what we had to discuss, or what we were dealt with as far as reviewing.
Right.
For which our recommendations,
I'm just going to make a general comment about the whole thing first. I think it's very well done, and I commend your committee, but I just want to make it known that this is one of the reasons why I think the DIF is important, because I look at the request for $1 million for sidewalk improvements, and it was cut to 500. Our downtown is the most vital part of our economy, Without it, we don't have tourism. That's what people come here to see. They see the old whaling village, we have a historic district, we have everything. We haven't spent money in years downtown. We spent it in other places. We requested $1 million and we got cut in half. And, you know, at some point, there's a lot of stuff that's requested here and only X amount of money in the budget because we have to fund the island home, we have to fund the dump, we have to fund all these other things out of the general fund. And Rick, you say, well, it's just simple, we'll just go and ask for an override, but an override isn't that simple. No one wants to see their taxes go up. So that's why I think, you know, in some of these areas, whether it's the waterfront improvement project or the Old South Road project, a DIF will generate a lot of money to improve the infrastructure in those areas.
I agree with you on the diff, but this particular item, I don't know if you want to speak to it, but it wasn't so much that the committee cut it, but there were some reasons for that recommendation.
You're back on the
Do you want-
sidewalks, Mr. Chairman, just so I know
On
what
the
you're talking.
sidewalk improvement
Yeah.
plan. Do you want to
Yeah.
speak to that?
So that was, there was discussion on whether $1 million for the sidewalk plan would be spent in the year. In other words, you're dealing with weather, you're dealing with in-season, you're dealing with if you can staff it to finish that project. And I think the committee was worried that this fund was going to start building up a balance, and that balance is going to get bigger. So it's still too early for us to see a trend in what is an appropriate amount for us to spend on this, and what can actually get spent within that time frame, or if we're just overshooting and we're going to be building up a balance in that account. So that I remember that was one of the big items, but it's an early. It's only been out for a little while, and we're still trying to figure out what that trend is and what that available amount that they're able to spend is each year.
Just to follow up a little bit on what Bobby said, I think and I think for this board to think about, when you refer to cuts, Bobby, I think of the Capital Program Committee as making recommendations, and we can go to their charge in a minute, and they make recommendations to this board, the Board of Selectmen, who have a responsibility to make decisions as well. I don't think we just are here to ask for your advice and counsel and say, that's it, any more than the Finance Committee. You make a report to both the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen. And I think I appreciate your trying to get that report in earlier so that we could deal with some of these issues. And if we want to have more, Bobby, we would have more time to discuss that. We're finally dealing with this the night we're adopting the budget. And it's hard, but I think if we'd done it earlier, Bobby, those would have been healthy discussions.
I think,
those, just to the point, though, that may be something you might want this board or the future board may do in the future, but it's not, in my understanding, Libby, this has not come to the Board of Selectmen in the past. Is that correct?
Not by the committee.
Well, I'm just reading the bylaw, and I just think it's helpful for this board. I appreciate you saying they haven't come, but maybe that's a little bit of on us as well as on the committee.
Absolutely, yeah.
To go back to understand the underlying documentation and why you exist as a committee. And I think there's great value. I mean, the report is really well done. I enjoyed reading it. But there's little value if we can't deal with it. So I'm
Certainly.
just encouraging us, what you said yourself, Christie, to get to it earlier so we can have a dialogue between this board and the capital
Yeah.
program.
6 or 8 weeks earlier than this would be great.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
and the other point I would like to
Yep.
make, if I could, is I agree with Bobby about the sidewalks. And one way to be thinking about it, I think, is as a percentage. If we're going to put $6 million into roads, let's put, $1 million or two. Let's put a third. Let's put $2 million into sidewalks, something like that. And we have, millions of dollars worth of sidewalk work. And so, somehow we have to have some sort of policy. And if we want to encourage people not to always drive cars, then we have to invest in the alternatives, and we have to see that as money well spent. And so I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
I think we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, one of the criteria that possibly we'll deal with next year is if the money can be spent that year. This kind of fell into that, but anyway.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
if I could, I understand where you're coming from, Christie, but I have to respectfully disagree. We have a sidewalk improvement plan. It's phased in. We know how much each phase will cost. I'm going to be gone, but I would like to stress to this upcoming board that this become a priority. And instead of doing this over a 5 or 6 year period, appropriate all the money at once and get it done. Put it out to bid, get a contract in there and blast it out in one winter. It could be all done in one winter if the town decided they wanted to go that route. We did the entire Phase 2B sewer project in one winter. That's a lot more work than fixing sidewalks. You know, we've made great strides in the last 9 months on this. Libby and staff have done a phenomenal job. We've met, we've got all the parties together. I think we have pretty much a consensus on a plan now, but I would like to see the town move forward with it as quickly as possible and not do this piece by piece because we're only going to allocate, we can only do so much in 1 year. I think you actually long-term save money if you just put it a whole thing out to bid at once and got it all done, Christie.
So I think, you know, we've got town administration, town departments who are kind of doing their evaluation and putting forward the budget to the Capcom. We have the board who has their own priorities, and we need to find a way for those three, and the finance committee, we need to find a way for those three groups to have good communication, because the Capcom gets a large budget that, in this case, exceeds the amount of money that we have to spend. So you know, I think that for the future, that is a task for the board and town administration and the committee to work on.
But Jim, let's just be clear, I don't, just so we understand the process this year, I don't know what this totals up to offhand, Christie. What, $5 million or something? I'm not sure what the total is.
Yeah.
Do you remember offhand? 6.8. Thank you, okay. And it's funded, what, entirely by free cash and retained earnings, or are there any other
The real estate
sources?
account and prior year warrant articles.
Yeah, also,
Warrant. But I don't recall, and I may be wrong asking the board here, that we sent this through with the absolute understanding that no more funds or other alternative financing arrangements might not have been looked at in the process. So that's why I'm trying to understand, Jim, if the sidewalks were cut because there was an assumption that there was only so much money.
No, as I said earlier,
thought that's what you said.
what I went through earlier, Rick,
Only
was
so
to
much
tell
could
you
get done in 1
that the
year.
process, the department director said, we can't get the work done. And so we only need the money in the plan that will, you know, that will go, so we can get the work done that year. That was the criteria.
But can I ask you another question? Another thing that's always important is, are these going to be set up as I think of them as articles, and capital articles usually have a life well beyond 1 year, and they don't close out. So the idea, going back to Bobby's point, we wouldn't need to cut the amount allocated as an article because it's spendable over time as the town's able to spend it. Do you see the
Yep.
point I'm making? So I'm not sure that was necessarily,
yeah, I'm,
so communication
Yeah.
back and forth on these might have come to a different conclusion
Yeah.
on how to handle that.
Yeah, I want to say, the capital committee felt strongly about this as far as continuing to fund it. I mean, we're not taking $1 million allocation and trying to permanently make it 500,000. I think we're just trying to find where that point is to where the funds are appropriated and they're spent within that year, and we're not like building up a balance of.
Just stop there a minute.
Yep.
When you say spent within that year, I think that's the point I'm trying to get at. Maybe that's the guideline that we're trying to develop, so that a capital article is spent within the year, but they don't have to be. If we allocate an article for the school, it might take 2.5 years. So it's spent over a longer period of time, Christie.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
I see.
So,
Well, like a lot of the contracts that we have come before us are multi-year contracts. So if we
Another-
appropriated the $1 million, then couldn't we put that into a multi-year contract
Dawn,
with
exactly.
someone to do the
And
work?
So,
we have to
Brian,
wait
maybe-
for the next year.
So Brian, could you maybe give us a little analysis of how the monies are put forward in the articles and for this article, and how, in what time frame we.
Okay, can you get the chart, the
Yes.
spending?
Should there be a positive vote on Article 10 at town meeting authorizing the expenditure of $6.8 million on the capital projects that are listed, they're all set up as capital articles within the accounting system, and they're open until the projects are done. And if it's free cash, real estate, raise and appropriate, or anything like that, then after the project's done, if there's unspent money because bids came in lower than expected or whatnot, then at a future town meeting, we could certainly reappropriate that money. If it was a borrowing, we'd have to stay within certain guidelines. But these articles are open until the projects would be complete. One thing I would like to mention, though, to follow on to Christie's points about the sidewalks, when we did the initial walkthrough of financing all of the projects for fiscal 18, there was about potentially, I think it was almost $2 million worth of projects that were going to be considered to be funded for borrowing, but we decided not to fund through borrowings because we have a $30 million project on the warrant for this year. So there was a discussion internally about whether to borrow or whether to reduce some of these allocations to fit within that scope and move forward with the knowledge that we may have to make some changes in the future years to the projects or to the funding levels. So there was a lot of, I don't want everybody to think that they were just cut. There were a lot of internal discussions about how to do this and whether or not that made sense or not at this point. So.
Well, just one observation is we might all have come to the same conclusion, Brian, but I think that's a fairly important policy discussion because that decision might be the driver for eliminating projects that this board felt were really critical to get underway. And I would hope that that might come back here at some point earlier next year for those kinds of discussions. Because that gets to Bobby's point about funding the sidewalks, in my judgment.
Christie, did you have a?
I did. I just was, Brian, if you could, is there a balance in that fund?
In which fund?
The sidewalk improvement, it's,
Well, excuse me, I don't remember off the top of my head what we spent, but right now. But I know that last year's town meeting we authorized $1 million, and I don't know how much we spent to date on it, but
I think it was 1.5, and we've hardly spent anything.
so
that was.
So this takes the total to 2 million.
2 million.
As an article that's available.
That's
So
correct.
there's a
That's
fair amount
correct.
available.
Yes.
Yep.
That may
I
help.
guess I got to make another comment, is my frustration, and after 6 years on this board, I guess I shouldn't be frustrated by it. I guess it's just the way of the world, but it just seems like these projects just take forever and ever and ever to get done. I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time. We've had meetings and meetings and meetings about it, yet we haven't put a shovel in the ground yet. I was really hoping we'd at least get the bottom end of Main Street and Straight Wharf taken care of this year, and I don't know if we're going to get there at this point. It doesn't look like it. Yet again, a whole nother winter goes by with nothing getting done. And, I mean, it's not going to be me who's going to be screaming and hollering here next year, but I know we didn't have a director in the DPW and things changed and all that, but somebody, I'm looking at the three of you who are still here, needs to light a fire under this. This needs to get done, and I think it should all be done at once. Tear up town one time and be done with it, not do it over a 3-year period where we're doing this section and that section, this section and that section. Just get it all done, and let's move on.
that information we did have, which played into our recommendation.
Yeah, I agree with Bobby about down in Lower Main, we could have done, but one of my concerns about doing it all, Bobby, is we did, the neighbors did Quinn Street for $60,000, and the very next day it was driven over and ruined. So we have to figure out how to stop some of that stuff. If we fix every sidewalk downtown and they remain parked on and driven on, then, we have some other issues we have to deal with before we spend money on certain
The
roads.
south side of Main Street doesn't get driven on.
Exactly.
Easy Street doesn't get driven on. Lower Straight Wharf doesn't get driven on.
Yeah, so we should be doing all those.
All those core
100%.
streets that we've all walked. I've walked them with Dave, I've walked them with the DPW, we've all walked them. It's time to get it done. And now, we've lost this year again, it looks like. So if I was still on this board, I want this shovel-ready September 15th.
So we have an opportunity to say that tonight to town administration, if anybody would like to make a motion to do that.
I'll second Bobby's motion.
I make a motion to make the sidewalk improvement plan a priority and to have it shovel-ready for, well, let's not say September 15th, the day after Columbus Day.
October,
Because you gotta get
November,
through the holidays. But as soon as I want the permits and everything in place and the contract to go out to bid, if it's at all possible by then.
And is there a second?
I'd be happy to vote for that as long as it's subject to Matt's concern about some streets.
Yeah, no, I'm saying do the streets that we don't say.
The main area that I want to see improved is Lower Main, going down to the Highline dock, the south side of Main Street, Washington Street to the town lot, and then Easy Street over to the steamship, so that people can get from point A to point B with a suitcase to these boats and up Main Street. And the bottom end of Main Street in front of the, we've gone through these plans. Everybody who's been part of this knows what we're talking about. We're not talking about everything, but there's like 3 or 4 phases. I'd like to at least see the first 2 phases get done next winter.
So Eric, did you get the list of the streets?
Did I get a list of the streets?
You were able to,
Yeah, South
okay.
Main and everything else. I just wanted to let you know that I sat in a meeting last week with National Grid, and they have a major project planned starting in fall, October, that is going to be the majority of downtown. So this is going to greatly impact that. Just keep that in your mind.
So if they're going to tear it all up, this is a perfect time for us to put it back together the right way.
So there's a motion on the table. It's been seconded. Any further discussion?
No,
Did you want to add something about the?
No, I think the part about the streets is fine. I just, I don't mind directing the town manager to do this and get it underway, but if she was to be asked the question and said, it's impossible, then we're,
Yeah, I
I
don't necessarily want to
guess-
mandate
I don't
that
hear
happen, but I'd like to make sure.
make
that
sure
it-
we get as quickly as we can.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I'm all for that. Okay, thank you.
So I don't want to
When it-
Yeah.
the last thing I want to do on my way out the door is give Libby an impossible task.
That's
But
all
I would
I'm
want, I'd like to see, it's been a couple of years, and I'd like to get it.
The only reason I suggested, I said tonight's the opportunity. We've been discussing it for about, a good amount of time. So I just want to, this is your opportunity to take some action.
That's the action, it's on the
Okay.
board.
Libby,
Aye.
did you have any comment? Before we take the
I have a
vote?
lot of comments. I'm trying not to say them all right at this moment, but we've been talking internally a lot about the downtown sidewalk improvement project, and we had intended to come to you with an update that more laid out a timeline of all of these things, and we have not been able to put that together yet. We are working on it. There are a lot of priorities that are given to us all the time, and some of the difficulties with this project, and I know nobody wants to hear it, but they do relate to procurement and permitting and right-of-way issues and utility issues, and they're just not easy. So we're trying to put all of those things into kind of a task list, and I think it would be reasonable for us to get that together and get procurement things and all the stuff that needs to be in place to get a project well underway by fall, around the time that Bobby is saying. And I'm sure we can get a lot done next winter. We're shooting to get some stuff done before summer. Won't be everything.
So I think the motion
I think
would
it's
be.
a best efforts.
It's a best effort, so I think,
So can you rephrase that motion?
you want to repeat the motion, Erica?
Repeat that motion.
I'll rewrite it. Make,
Motion to make the sidewalk improvement plan a priority with breaking ground this fall for South Main Street, Lower Main Street Wharf area.
yeah, but I don't want to make it that specific, because if it can't happen, it can't happen. Just do your best effort to make those areas happen.
The sense of the board is clear, I think.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. Other questions for Christie?
Well, I've just a general question, Jim, on how we're going to handle it, because later on we have the warrant, and the capital article in the warrant is, as I understand it, maybe a little bit different from these recommendations as coming from the Finance Committee. Do you want to tackle those differences and clarify them for everybody's information when we get to that, or do you want to just do it right now?
Now,
I mean, I heard there was a change or two.
I think the only,
You had some,
there's a couple changes that I think we talked about here, which were to the Island Home. I think there was $200,000 added for improvements there, and I believe 200 added to the Sewer Enterprise Fund for water quality
I
improvement
saw
study in
those.
Nantucket. I think those were the
and
only
that
things.
those came after the report.
Right, but But then, is the Finance Committee making any other recommended changes that are,
I don't believe there were
Brian,
any
no?
other changes that it differed from the capital committee's report.
There was only one that we received relatively recently, which was just Motorola didn't hold the bid for the dispatch, and that was increased. It was actually going to be a $110,000 increase, but we got it down to $40,000. So that's the only other change.
so the water company building is in here and just,
The
Oh,
water
I'm
company
sorry.
building is not in there, no.
That's out.
That is out.
Yep, sorry, there
well,
was,
that's a change I.
yes.
Yes.
I was looking to
Yes.
see whether or not we were gonna make sure everybody knew that. I hadn't known that,
Okay,
and I heard it
yeah.
earlier today, but that's a significant
Right,
change.
FinCom voted not to endorse the use of retained earnings for that.
So this board has its own options in that regard. I mean, FinCom makes
Right.
a recommended warrant motion, but this board just needs to know that, because I think that's a significant change.
Hold that thought when
Yeah,
we
you're right.
go back to that article. So, and that's part of the problem with having, the FinCom motions done on, because I was at that meeting, I must have left before I don't think they took that action yesterday.
No, they took
On
it,
that.
I think it was a week ago, or 2 weeks ago,
So I
Mr.
missed that
Chairman.
meeting. So I went to
I can't remember.
it's just, we don't have a systematic approach to these
Well,
things.
I'm not,
Yeah.
I don't sit on the capital
Yeah.
program committee, so.
No, I'm talking about the changes that the FinCom made to the,
Well, I think that what I'm trying to do is just, the reason I asked, because I think that's significant, and I think we're trying to get all the changes
Yep.
that we ought to be aware of and make sure this board itself agrees with those
Yeah.
changes.
Right, well, there were actually-
Otherwise, we're just
yeah.
sort of going along.
There was one other change that I think we didn't mention, which was within the sewer department, it was presented to the Capcom as well, and the FinCom agreed to use retained earnings to cover the difference in C Street Pump Station as well. That was the other change that was actually, I think, discussed here before it went to Capital Program Committee,
So
but that was
that's a
presented.
source of money. issue.
Yes, for that. So that was supplemental funding to that.
Go ahead, Rick, anything else?
I got it, you
Okay.
got it.
No, I'm glad Rick brought it up. I read the
Yeah.
stuff in our packet, and I read it again, and I didn't catch it.
Yeah.
And there's,
No.
we've got almost 500 pages, and things are coming at last minute,
Yeah.
and, I'm pretty good at trying to find this, ferret this stuff out, but I didn't catch it, so I thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Christie, thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you for coming.
See you next year.
Yeah. Libby, next item?
Your next item is review of the Human Services Contract Review Committee report and recommendations for fiscal 2018. And Dorothy Hertz, the chairman of that group, I think is going to take you through. They have already been to the Finance Committee, and I don't think they made any changes from the recommendations.
I think we're just going to go to the recommendations. Yep. I think first and foremost, I would like to go through the process that we go through, so everybody understands the process. Applications are given to private nonprofits on the island that provide human services. They will bring their grant requests back to us. We go through reading the grant request, then we meet with them. We have about a half hour, sometimes an hour meeting with an individual organizations. They get to present what they're going to do for the year, and we get to ask questions. After that process, we go and do an on-site interview where it allows the candidates to be more at home and to be able to show us what they do, or for us to answer or have questions answered that we ask. After that, we go back with that to the group, and the group it's usually 2 people that go for the interview process. We go back to the group, and the group will then sit and discuss what they've heard. We usually try to send the person that has the most questions about an organization to the organization so that they can come back with those questions answered, and they present them to us. We then start our deliberation process. The deliberation process usually will go on for about 4 weeks. Once we have come up with our determination, we spend about another month on the research that goes into the report that you get in front of you. Taken into consideration this year were the facts that we have a lot of new private nonprofits starting up in fiscal year 18 here to provide some of the services. that some of these organizations are presenting to us. And also in this, we have a couple of organizations that actually merged. We have Fair Winds, which took on mentoring youth. So now that's a one contract. And the Interfaith Council is now being looked at as one contract, which is the rental assistance and the food pantry. So we had a request of $490,000. And when we went through this process, we actually had to look at each organization and what services they provide and how important those services are to the individuals in the community and how well those services are actually delivered. We couldn't meet some of the requests were not funded fully for some of the reasons. Looking into what was happening in fiscal year 18 here played a part in why the funding would be where it would be. How fiscally sound they were, meaning whether they had money in the bank and didn't actually need all the money that the town or what they were requesting from the town, and what services and what the residents would benefit from the services they're providing. So as you see, the Safe Place, well, I think it's best that you ask me questions on how we came up with some of these determinations.
So you're on the CRC FY18 Article 9 funding recommendations? You're on that
Correct.
exhibit. So questions from the board about that?
I don't have questions necessarily about it. I think in your report, the things that stood out to me were the changing demographics, of the island. In 3 years, the numbers, the demographics, socioeconomic changes are amazing. And then the growth rates, that we're growing as fast as we are, and that we're closer to 20,000 people than we are to 10 or 12, year round. And I think those things highlight to me where the increases, and it's not a big increase, but 389 to 400 is warranted.
Yeah, it is a huge increase. And in actuality, I mean, in getting those numbers, we went to the Steamship Authority, we went to the Registry of Motor Vehicles, we went to all the churches and tried to get how many parishioners they had. We went to the Mass Department of Education, Mass Department of Early Education, various shops, looking at where certain demographics, certain people will shop to try to figure out how many people we actually seeing here. So we tried to, that's why it took so long. It was actually doing a lot of research into all the different ways that we could actually come up with a number that was substantial.
Yeah, the one that jumped out, they did education year-round, residents that were, enrolled to vote. Voters and kids in schools alone got us to 12,000.
Right.
That's amazing to me.
And then the birth rate, if you look at the birth rate and how many children aren't in registered daycare here over the last 5 years, it's major.
No, it's true. That was impressive.
But the human services needs of our community have grown significantly, as has the population, and an $11,000 increase doesn't come near to addressing the increased needs of our population. I'm real concerned about it. So I think we need to, revisit how we come up with that number. And I don't know if it should be more based on some kind of a needs analysis or a gap analysis, but it's just it's not keeping up with the increased demand.
No.
It is hard to deal with. I think we're one of the few towns in the state that has this kind of a budget to start with, Jim.
There are only two of you.
Only two. And the town has done, I think, very well. We could always do a little more, but there's also, the rest of the community has to step up. In some towns, imagine you were in a town that had this kind of growth and didn't have any town contribution. I mean, that's 95% of the towns in Massachusetts.
But we're very generous to many populations. For example, the schools, the Island Home, we have a continuous subsidy, and this is a group of folks who are often unnamed, and I think we should be passionate about linking services to them. That's a personal opinion. So.
It's slightly harder, I think, for some of these groups to fundraise because it's personal issues that are going on, and it's harder to put those things completely out there. And it just strikes me that we may, when we're budgeting for next year, we might want to look at increasing it to 500,000 rather than 4.
We have to also, I mean, we will be having we know of two other organizations that'll probably be coming to the town for funding. But the exciting news was the fact that we do have Gosnold opening up here. And they are licensed, and they're starting in Tim Leprey's office this week, and they're opening up their facility by April 1st. It is a major, major step in dealing with mental health and substance abuse here. So we are really, really excited about that. They've been working in the schools. They've been working with Briar Patch here. I know that they've been meeting with all local organizations, and they've been doing a lot of collaboration with the hospital. It's very, very exciting. So as we look at all of our services, we're also seeing others coming in to try to help take care of some of the lacking or the numbers that are here. So
they're
we're excited about that.
They're a significant player in markets on the Cape, and it might be nice to, if the board has an interest in the future, learning more about what they're going to be doing here. So.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Questions from the board? Is there a motion to, do we need an approval for this? Is there a second?
Second.
Any
Thank
further
you.
discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no? Dorothy, thank you very much
Thank you.
for your hard work
Yeah,
and
you
your
put a
committee.
lot of time into it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So Libby Community Sailing.
Community Sailing has a lease with the town for town property at 7 Shadbush Lane. It is their facility where they store and maintain their boats, and we are going to be undergoing a discussion with them about renewing that lease. It expires this year. In the meantime, though, they have an opportunity to get some improvements made to the facility, as well as some much-needed funding by subleasing the property to Marine Home Center for a project that they need off-site staging and storage for. So we've talked to Community Sailing about this a little bit, and it's not in your packet, but we have discussed internally anyway, a recommendation to the board that their request to sublease be approved, contingent upon a couple of conditions, including the town getting a percentage of the cash payment. I believe the cash payment is in the vicinity of $75,000, so we are suggesting perhaps 10% might be fair. The road is going to be hardened and somewhat improved, the road leading to the facility and around the facility, and we would just recommend that the improvements be signed off on by the Department of Public Works, that the town be held harmless for any and all work done by non-town hired contractors, and be added to Community Sailing's insurance if that is a recommendation by the town's insurance, which we have not yet finalized, I don't believe. And there was a bit of talk about installing some lighting. We just want to make sure that the electric bill would be paid for by Community Sailing. I know that sounds cheap, but that's what we would recommend. And Diana is here, and I don't know if
Oh, hi, Diana.
you maybe want her to give more of an
If you'd like
overview of.
to, I do know there's time is of the essence to this for Marine Home Center, so it'd be helpful to take some action tonight.
Are we doing two separate things here? Are we extending the lease 10 years?
The only item on the agenda is the sublease.
It's just a sublease.
Okay.
because
It
that's
does talk
important.
The
about
letter
this in-
speaks to both, but
Right.
the agenda just covers the.
Okay, that's important to understand.
Yeah, it didn't get on, but, and anyway, so they'll have to come back, and it needs to be done timely, so. So Diana, do you want to just summarize a little bit? And I know you and I've talked, and.
Thank you,
So-
thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Libby. She did a pretty good job. I do have a copy of the site plan that we could put up if you need to see it. But we are, first of all, very grateful to the town for everything that Nantucket Community Sailing does. You provide us our waterfront access at Pulpus Harbor and Jetties Beach, and then in 2012, when we signed this lease for our maintenance facility, we were able, for the first time, to store all of our boats in one place and to be able to work on them. We built a 5,000 square foot wonderful maintenance facility that I think is the envy of most of the boatyards on the island. They've all been over to take a look at it. But that's not what we're talking about tonight. We love the maintenance facility, but Marine Home Center came to us. This is Ron Foster, who's the general manager of Marine Home Center. And as you all know, they had a horrible fire and they are in the process of building a new storage building on their Orange Street property. However, while they're doing the construction, which they hope to start immediately this month, they need a place to basically warehouse all of their merchandise for the store for the coming season. And especially, you know how hard it is to get steamship reservations in the summer. They need to start staging all of that merchandise now before the season starts. And so they came to us and said, could we sublease about an acre of your maintenance facility property? We have 2.7 acres that is all fenced in and secure. And they would bring over some of their tractor trailers and basically use them as a warehouse with grills and mattresses and garbage cans and everything else that they sell in the store. And then they would basically come back and forth between the Shadbush facility and their store with smaller trucks. And we thought we could accommodate them by moving our boats around. It makes us a little bit more crowded on the rest of our property, but we think that Marine solves a really important need for the community. We think they're a good neighbor. We would like to be a good neighbor. And so we think it's the right thing to do and are asking your permission to sublease. Our lease with the town allows for us to do it with your permission. I would like to bring to your point, I understand the town needs revenue. We do pay the town a very modest lease amount for this property every year, which we're grateful for. But we also put $100,000 into improving Industry Road and laying commercial-grade utilities down the road so that when other people move into this commercial industrial area, they can turn on the lights. And we're happy to have done that. We needed to do it for ourselves, but it also benefits other people who will be using this property, whether we're talking about the harbor master or Harbor Fuel or anyone else in the future. As part of Marine Home Center's plans, and I can let Ron speak for that, they would need to improve Shadbush Road to make it drivable. We've never used that road. We use the Industry Road access. And they would also harden a portion of our property because we've hardened most of it, but where it's not hardened, when it rains, the trailers would sink right into the mud, and that would be unusable. And so certainly that hardening would benefit community sailing. Improving Shadbush Road would benefit the town and other users of the commercial industrial property. And we think overall, allowing Marine Home Center to do this benefits the island in a great way.
Thank you. Libby, just to review your recommendation with the board, we just review that one more time?
Oh, sure. We were suggesting that the town get a percentage of any cash, or whatever the cash payment arrangement is, that the road hardening specifications are signed off on by the DPW, that the town is held harmless for any and all work done and added to either Community Sailings Insurance or Marine Home Centers. And that the electric bills for any lights installed be paid for by Community Sailing.
We'll definitely pay the electric bill.
And you're recommending that this waiver be granted?
Yes.
Okay. Questions from the board? Bobby?
The only comment I have is I'd like to see an end date on this. It says 12 to 18 months. Put an end date of 18 months out there. If it goes longer than that, it has to come back in front of this board for review. I just don't want to leave it open-ended.
So let's add that to the motion.
Yeah.
So is that acceptable? You come back, okay.
I mean, I know how long it takes to build something, Ron.
Yep.
And
Yes,
if it takes
18
longer than
months.
18 months, come back in and we'll
I think
discuss
that's
it, but I
an
just think,
That's a good idea.
So are you adding that to Libby's recommendation?
that's what
as
I
a
would do,
motion?
yes.
Well,
And we're using the 10%, I'm sorry, the 10% is in effect?
That's up to the board. It's a recommendation from town administration, so. So with that,
I would say the $75,000 that I quoted is not a fixed number. We're still negotiating with Marine,
Okay.
and also it would depend on how long they use our property. That would be a 12-month figure.
So our motion
To be
to suggest
10%,
10% of whatever
10%.
we work out.
That's fine.
so is there a motion to accept the recommendation of town administration
So moved.
with the change to a defined period of 18 months? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. Good
Thank
luck.
you. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman,
Yeah.
when will the extension of the ground lease be back in front of us?
As
Will
soon
it
as
be before
as
the
soon as
election
town
or after?
administration
Yes, it'll be
says it's
before.
ready for us.
We just have a lot going on. So we will be meeting with Diana shortly about that.
Next, there's a couple of public hearings. I'd like to open a public hearing to consider the application for transfer of seasonal wine malt beverages restaurant license from the current manager of Company The Cauldron to JKRG LLC, Joseph G. Keller, manager. And
Yes.
Amy, you want to give us a little?
Yes, so in this case, generally when we had these change of ownerships, we've had a surrender of our license and a new license application. In this case, this is a transfer of the license. So the current license is going to be transferred in ownership to Joseph Keller, who's applying for this license. Currently, he's at Graydon House, has quite an impressive background in the industry, and is purchasing Company The Cauldron. So it'll be a transfer of the current license upon approval by the state. No changes to the premises or licensed premises, so it'll be exactly the same.
Okay, for the applicant?
Good evening. For the applicant, Rhoda Weinman. My client, Joseph Keller, is here with me this evening. He recently purchased Company of the Cauldron after the Kovalencheks had owned it for 29 years. Mr. Keller has been in the restaurant business for over 30 years. He moved to Nantucket in 1976, and he was the chef at the Woodbox for 16 years. After he left Nantucket, he moved to France and studied with some of the top chefs in the country. Upon his return to the United States, he ended up owning several restaurants all over the country, along with his brother Thomas. Including, you probably heard of the French Laundry, which is probably one of the top restaurants in the country, and he and his brother are in partnership with that. He was recruited this year by the Graydon House to come and start them off with the restaurant, setting up the menu, the beer and wine, and the liquor licensing and all of that. So he's been doing that for almost a year. He came here last May, and he'll stay there until the beginning of April, until he gets ready to open the Cauldron. The Cauldron will basically continue to be run exactly the way it's been in the last 29 years. There won't be any differences at all. They'll be doing 2 seatings a night, 6:45 and 8:30. They will continue on with just a wine and malt license, no liquor at all, just the beer and wine license. They will open every year around Daffodil Weekend, and they will continue on until the end of December. They want to go through Christmas stroll and through Christmas and probably close the end of December. He has a long-term lease with the current owner of the building, and it's a very long lease, so he looks forward to running that business and operating it for several years. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and Mr. Keller would also answer any questions, and I would respectfully request that you approve this
Thank you.
request.
Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this license transfer? Okay. Questions from the board?
Will he continue to operate that lovely back patio table?
Yes, the patio will be, and it'll be even lovelier, but yes, that will be open as well.
I'll close the public hearing and ask
Motion
for...
to approve.
Is there a second? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next, I'll open a public hearing to consider the application of a new entertainment license for the same restaurant. Amy?
Yes,
Just-
so,
excuse me, could I
Yep.
just- I'm sorry, do we need to mention the spiritual activities in the last motion? Maybe it was implied?
It was implied.
implied, and technically, since it's a transfer of the license, it's not a new
Okay.
license, so they've been good so far.
And was that with all the same conditions?
Yes, correct.
Right.
Yes. Okay. So entertainment.
license.
Yes. So, and in this case, entertainment license, one thing I'm going to point out is this location had never had an entertainment license. There are several establishments that are operating without one because they just have background music. We're looking to rectify that across the board, but obviously this came up. So it is a new application. However, requesting the same thing, basically background music, CD, radio type of thing, no amplification. I'll point out I did receive, I had one conversation and received one email from the next door neighbors, Craft Masters, just concerned that there wouldn't be any amplification or outdoor music of any kind, but they are requesting just the similar background music, and we are bringing them up to code with the license.
So that request from Craft Masters has been accommodated by the applicant?
Yeah, they were. I just wanted to bring up that they did, as an abutter, make a comment on it, and could not be here tonight, but it was just making sure it wasn't something new.
Great. For the app-
Again, Rhoda Weinman for the record. Yes, I had a conversation with someone that called me on behalf of the Craft Masters. The term entertainment license, I think, is somewhat of a misnomer, and when I explained to her that anything that gets plugged in has to have an entertainment license, I think she breathed a sigh of relief, and I said it's not going to be anything different. It's going to be a radio and a CD player, and it'll be inside only, it won't be outside. So she seemed satisfied with that.
Yeah, I think the word entertainment definitely perks people up.
Right.
And then one other point is the timing and the hours that we have to approve, which 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., correct?
Well, we won't have any entertainment, no music outside, it's just going to be inside.
So we just have to, I just want to put that in the record
Right.
as far as what we're approving. Hours of entertainment, 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. indoors.
Right. That's fine.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come and make a comment about this application? So I'll close the public hearing and look to questions or action from the board. Bobby?
No harp?
No harp.
No harp. No, I know.
No, you don't want the potential for one? I mean, the place was famous for that forever, even though they didn't have a license for it.
I just heard that, I did not realize
I know
that.
Mary's not here anymore, but.
I know.
I didn't know that, though.
You never know, and,
Well, we're not asking for a harp now.
okay, well, come back if you find one.
Okay, we will, thank you.
Is there a motion?
to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Libby, Town Manager Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have an organizational assessment report that was recently completed on the Department of Culture and Tourism, formerly known as Visitor Services. And just a tiny bit of background before I turn it over to Melissa. We have a general practice that every year or two or even 3, we generally have been doing organizational assessments or operational reviews of our departments, and we have not done one for this department, to our knowledge, ever. We budgeted to do one for fiscal 16 and did not get much of a response the first time we issued an RFP. So after there was a management transition, we tried again and engaged Sarah Glatt, our consultant, who's conducted a very, I think, thorough and comprehensive review of the department and interviewed a number of stakeholders. And I'll let Melissa take over from there.
Thank you so much, Melissa
Welcome.
Murphy, Director of Culture and Tourism. And thank you for having us here tonight to present this to you. We will try to move through this thoroughly, but at a good clip for you. As Libby noted, Sarah did a fantastic job, and we think this is a very thorough assessment of this department, where it's been, where it sits currently, and where we see the future of the department going. So I'd like to recognize some people in the audience, not by name, but we have some of those key stakeholders here tonight in support of the assessment and its recommendations, and I want to thank them. They range from staff to the Chamber of Commerce, the Lodging Association, and members of our Visitor Services Advisory Committee. The stakeholders, staff, and all of these people have been a very instrumental part of this process from the very beginning, and have had a chance to review and discuss the process throughout the development of this assessment. And I fully endorse, and we have their endorsement of the strategies and recommendations contained within it. I'm also confident that if these recommendations are followed through, the department will be successful in accomplishing its mandate. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Sarah Glatt of Paper Crane Associates, who conducted the assessment. She'll lead you through the presentation this evening, and I, of course, will be right here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. So this is a very brief introduction to what is a 97-page report for anybody who wishes to read the entire thing. Can you help? So as Libby introduced this, this department began and had many decades as the Department of Visitor Services. It had a name change last winter to the Department of Special Events, Culture, and Tourism. And with a leadership change and an expanded mandate with its new name of Special Events, Culture, and Tourism, as well as the process that has been gone through with a number of other departments, it seemed a ripe time to do an assessment of this department. Thank you. So the goals of the assessment were to define the expanded department's mission and priorities, develop a set of measurable outcomes, review how resources were currently allocated within the department, and align them with the mission priorities and outcomes that were being set through the process, and take a look at how the department related to other entities within the town government and within the community. As both Libby and Melissa introduced, I began this process with a set of interviews with many of you on the Board of Selectmen, staff, both year-round and seasonal staff, and members of the advisory committee. I also talked to a number of stakeholders around Nantucket. We also did a deep dive in the data that the department held, looked externally to peer communities within Massachusetts, peer departments within Massachusetts, as well as communities across the country. All of those things built together into this theory of change and set of strategies that I'm going to walk you through in detail. And working closely with department leadership, we took those strategies and started to map the implication of those priorities on how the department conducts its work and allocates its resources. So I'm going to very quickly just touch on we've renamed this department. It is now the Department of Culture and Tourism, and we've articulated its mission as to support the continued development of Nantucket as a healthy community in which tourism is a significant contributor to residents' economic stability and economic security, and that Nantucket's natural, cultural, and historic resources and quality of life are enjoyed by tourists and residents while being protected for future generations. Can we jump to the next page, please? I want to draw your attention to the second column, which is the green square. It talks about the department strategies that it's going to use to accomplish its work. And so these are the high-level strategies, and then there are much more detail that we can talk about. So its strategies are about providing resources to tourists and seasonal residents in both designing and undertaking their visit to Nantucket. It's about supporting activities and events that contribute to the quality of life for residents. It's about supporting the development of a healthy and balanced year-round and seasonal economy, about enhancing recognition of and support for the island's cultural community, and serving as a liaison to event producers and businesses. So the remainder of this presentation, which I'm not going to walk through in detail, walks through each of those strategies and articulates the key priorities that the department will be using to accomplish those strategies. It looks at what activities were in place at the launch of the assessment. Many times when I do assessments or strategic planning with organizations and town entities, what I find is that the organizations sort of continue doing what they were doing and wait to the end of a process and then start implementing. And I had the great pleasure this time of working with a department that was interested in making changes while we were underway. And so what this document also walks through is not just the activities that were in place at the launch, but the changes that the department implemented even while the assessment was underway. So it was a bit of a moving target, and I wanted to draw credit to the team for making changes in real time. This document also walks through the recommendations that I have made to the department for its priorities going forward, as well as a set of potential budget implications that should be flagged for where they may come before the town at a later time for some budget things. So I'd like to draw attention in a couple of places. So strategy one is about providing resources to tourists and seasonal residents. This is what most of you new visitor services to do. It's about having a space to meet visitors down on 25 Federal Street or on Strait Wharf, as well as the myriad of documents that they've always provided and information that they've had available about lodging and restaurants. Keep going. So they made a lot of changes, even during this assessment, about how they provided information and what information was available and where. And they've worked with their partners to strengthen the availability of information, so partners including the Chamber and the Lodging Association. So they launched an ambassador program, which many of you are familiar with. They are about to go live with a new website, visit nantucketisland.org, that provides an easy-to-remember URL that does not require you to know the town's website with a bunch of numbers at the end. They piloted in different evening hours, and they took a hard look at ensuring that they had the staffing throughout the year that they needed to meet the visitors when they're there. So the recommendations that I've honed, I was teasing Melissa about needing to create a bumper sticker that says, making sure that, continuing to evaluate how to meet visitors when they need information with the information they need, where and when it's needed, right? So what information do you need to plan your visit? What information do you need when you're here? And thinking through all the different ways that the department might be able to do that, whether it's different locations for visitor services information staff, or it's new materials, but really honing how and when and what information is needed by who, and making sure that the department is well positioned to do that. So keep going. So the budget implications of that could mean additional staffing as they add different satellite locations, the continued development of a website. Right now they're doing it within the town website. There's obviously some limitations to the town government's portal, so they may come back to you for some money around that. And continuing to work with partners to think about how to provide web-based capabilities to book lodging, restaurants, and tickets, which is not something that the department provides right now. So strategy 2 is about the department's support of the quality of life for residents and visitors. And the ways in which this work today are around the seasonal activities at Children's Beach, the 4th of July, and their partnership with the Chamber for Daffodil Weekend, Nantucket Noel, and Halloween Parade. So some of the, keep going. All right, so some of the changes that were made during the assessment process were evaluating whether the department was best suited to manage Children's Beach and 4th of July activities, and then working with the Chamber to think about how to best support some of the activities that it had been supporting, and there's now a sponsorship agreement in place for those. Going forward, the recommendations I'm making is continue to really define what it means to support the quality of life. I think this is a topic that's going to be worthy of much discussion by the department over the coming years, as well as thinking through how to really up the amenities. When I talk about amenities, I mean public services, from bathrooms to sidewalks to benches to signages, to make sure that the things that tourists need are there and available when they need it. And so there may be budget implications around beautification, and there may be continued requests for funding around the supportive events or other programming for quality of life. So the third strategy for this department's work is around supporting the development of a healthy, balanced, and year-round seasonal economy. The top priority here is about collecting, analyzing, and distributing data on tourists and tourism industry, and it's about supporting the retention of year-round businesses, and as well as supporting the downtown area. So the activities in place at the time of this launch, this was not an area that the department had been doing much externally. It was primarily very internally focused and collecting data about the ways in which the department interacted with visitors. And so going forward, keep going. So during the assessment, we updated the metrics that the department will be using to track its impact. And we started to see an increased role the department was playing across the town in ensuring that amenities were available. Going forward, keep going. This strategy assumes that the department will take a larger role in collecting data and trying to figure out strategies about collecting data on tourists and tourism, and leveraging what data that does exist. Because I think, as we heard even earlier in today's board meeting, there are pockets of information available in all sorts of different places around the town, but the department's going to take it in partnership with some of its close allies to try to figure out how to leverage all of this information, analyze it together, and then push it back out so that other people can use it in setting their priorities and in their marketing efforts. For the cultural community, this strategy suggests that we're going to both promote visitor and resident participation in cultural activities, obviously continue to oversee the management of the Nantucket Cultural District, which came online early last year, and continue to enhance the recognition of the cultural community as a core sector in the social, physical, and economic fabric of Nantucket community. So going forward, what we're going to continue, keep on going. So going forward, this is about both continuing to support the cultural district. The department provides matching funds today, as well as oversight and strategic planning to the cultural district, but really trying to increase the promotion of cultural activities to residents and visitors, trying to get them to know about and to, as much as it can, perhaps facilitate booking of tickets, and then thinking about how to explore and measure the economic impact of the cultural activities and institutions on Nantucket's economy. And the final change that, the final strategy for the department is to continue to serve as a town liaison to event producers and businesses. And this is a new responsibility that came under the purview of the department last year, to collaborate with other town departments to vet and permit events that use public lands. And so this is both an education priority as well as a contributing to the vetting and permitting of those. And so what we're going to see going forward, or I'm recommending, is continuing to provide more information. You can probably keep going. Try to provide more information proactively to businesses about the rules around events and permitting, and continue to strengthen the relationship with the licensing administrator, and to try to streamline the communication and the actual permitting process. I'm happy to take questions about either the presentation or the larger report, and as Melissa said, she's available as well.
Questions? I had one, and maybe
Please.
in the 97 pages that I missed it, but
No worries.
did you, as part of the scope of your engagement, conduct any kind of an inventory of the what you call amenities, and are there benchmarks on if you have this many visitors, you need these services like this number of bathrooms and?
I did not, no.
Okay.
I think that that's going to be part.
Are those metrics available in your business line?
I think that that's going to be part of the work that the department is going to need to take on, right?
Okay.
That they, as they step into this larger mandate of tourism, which is now part of their name and their mandate beyond visitor services, they're going to need to take on questions like that. Okay.
Because we wrestle with that here on the cost of bathrooms and do we do mobiles but it would be nice to have a framework that says, in an ideal world, these are the best practices.
And if I could just add to that, I think one of the essential ways to get to an answer to a question like that rests with that data collection and that data analysis. So working with in partnership with other departments and other town agencies to figure out that impact.
Too.
Exactly, in other communities, and then figure out what's best practice. But, I think it's fairly clear that we don't have a very precise number, and we'll never have a precise number, but we're not even really close to an accurate number of what our year-round resident number looks like and what our impact is, where it grows to in the summer. And so that's a really high priority for the department going forward.
Other questions or comments? So very well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item under the town manager's report is to review recommendations from the Nantucket Harbor Shimmo Plus Parcel Sewer Extension Project, ancillary requirements for affected properties. So basically what this means is we've been having pretty regular meetings with the engineers and the OPM regarding this project. We've got a lot of things going. We have public outreach going. We have a lot of work underway right now that you are going to see later this month with regard to the necessary takings of easements and properties, certain pieces of property for the project. And one of the things we spent quite a bit of time on that the board brought up early on with this project is what is the homeowner going to be required to do and what is the town going to do? So I think David and Kent from Weston and Sampson can go, and our OPM's here as well, Frank Ayotte from Hazen and Sawyer. We've talked about a lot of options, everything from the homeowner doing everything. For example, if they're going to be connected to a low pressure sewer, have them purchase the necessary pump and whatever else is needed in order to connect, to the town doing everything. And I think we've landed about in the middle with the town doing the purchase of the necessary pump that would be consistent. We'd buy it in bulk and make sure that the homeowners get it through us, and then the homeowner would be responsible for any on-lot connection types of things. So I think David and Kent can take us through where we are with this. And I think there is a bit of a point of decision here for the board so that we can have a decision made as to how we are going to proceed with this, so we can work it into bid documents. And our public outreach was, as I mentioned earlier, is beginning next Tuesday with the public informational session. And we're going to be going to a lot of community groups over the next several months as we proceed with the project.
So you'll note the decision that we have to make as we go through the...
Yes,
Okay.
we will.
Hey, good evening, everyone. David Gray, Sewer Director. I'm here with Kent Nichols tonight from Weston and Sampson, and also Frank Ayotte from Hazen and Sawyer OPM. And I'm going to let Kent take on most of the presentation tonight. And if we have any questions, we can answer them as we go along or afterwards. But here's Kent Nichols.
So probably just as you go along, if you have questions, board members, we should ask them as they come up.
So thank you very much. Kent Nichols with Weston Sampson. Thank you to Libby and David for the introductions. So we tried our best to keep this presentation brief. We boiled it down to 4 slides. It was a lot of discussion that led us here. We got a lot of input, and including input from the board, and we've talked about this issue in some of the past meetings where we've been in front of you. One of the key challenges of the project for the areas that we looked at was the majority of the areas really don't lend themselves well to gravity sewers, conventional gravity sewers. So we had to apply, as we've told you in past meetings, a lot of low-pressure sewers to the project area. It's the best technology to do these types of areas because of the rolling topography, the space between the homes, the way the systems lay out. Unfortunately, when you do a low-pressure sewer system, there's some changes that happen on the property requirements and what happens on the service requirement on the property. Gravity sewer, you just run a pipe basically from your plumbing out to the street, and the water flows by gravity and you're done. With a low-pressure system, that same water flows by gravity from your house, has to flow into a small pump on your property, we call a grinder pump. That grinder pump then is installed on your property with pressure pipe and discharges out to a pressurized main in the street. Hence low-pressure sewers. The additional work, therefore, needed on the property to put in those pumps, operate and maintain those pumps, tends to be a little bit of a concern, so we've talked about that before. On-lot costs for property owners tend to be a little bit higher, and in some cases a little bit more than significantly higher when you have a pump, depending upon what you need to do for ancillary work to support that. That may even include things like upgrading your electrical system in your home when you have to put these pumps in. So there are some concerns there. Systems are reliable. We're in good shape as far as knowing how to specify the pumps. We can provide good support. We're actively working with David to make sure that the pumps are appropriate for the project.
Just a question, your voice sort of faded about the electrical upgrades?
Yep.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, I mean, you have to
They
go
don't have a
from
big enough
120
service.
to 200.
No, they'd have
About
to,
it.
they might have to put in a secondary electrical panel.
Another panel or something.
Then they're gonna have to run wires to the pump if the pump's 200 feet out in the yard.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just want to get a sense for what you're talking about.
pretty much for certain, if you got an old 60 amp service that hasn't been updated, you're going to have to upgrade
200
your
amp
electrical.
service in a newer house would be fine, but.
New houses are all pretty much 200s, and that's
So if the house was built 20 years ago, chances are he's going to have to do more.
No, he'll be fine 20 years ago, but 50 years ago.
50 years.
There you go.
Okay, just gives me. Yeah.
There's still a few houses with some older panels in them, and you might find that. So but it's a concern either way, because you still have to power the pump and things like that. Okay. So the main thing we spent the time talking about, as Libby said, is looking at options that are out there. What's been used by other communities and is practice in the industry to try to mitigate some of these impacts for properties that do have to have grinder pumps. Just for context, in the case of your project, we're talking about approximately 260 more or less, we're getting that number refined, but pretty close to that, properties that would end up on low-pressure sewers that would be served by an individual.
260, you said?
260.
How many total?
It's a little over 400, around that 400 range total properties. that have
Almost
been
60%, roughly.
Yeah, it's a good amount. And again, the concentration of that is mostly the Shimo area, which is almost entirely low pressure. The plus areas are most of them are primarily gravity sewers, and we've walked you through this before with a couple of exceptions, Bayberry and a few other areas.
And those are the more the year-round
Yeah.
residences that will
Yeah.
have the gravity relative to the Shimo.
I don't know, there's a lot of
little
year-round
variation.
people in Shimo.
No, but as opposed to as a percentage, it's more year-round than it is in the Shimo. Yeah, okay.
So, more or less is there. So, Erica, if you flip the slides. So we kind of boiled this down to about 8 options. We presented a pretty broad table with a lot of detail in it, and we boiled that down for the purposes of our discussion with you tonight, but I can answer questions about this in general. In general, all the options include the town installing the pipes in the streets. And in your case, we usually call that the right-of-ways, but where we're going to talk about easements needed for some of the private roads here, that's a little different issue. But for the sake of discussion, all the mains, whether they're gravity or low pressure, get put in by the town. That's part of our town project. We build it, we do it. What towns traditionally don't do when they build a sewer project is do the work on private property. So most of what we're going to talk about in these options is that differential. So the basic approach.
If you could just speak up, I think your voice is fading out. Is maybe
Am I
having closer to the
standing
microphone.
too far
There you
from
go.
the
Thank you.
microphone? That's a good way. So the basic option that we start with is one, and this is what most communities do now, and they do this to try to keep the costs of projects down. The homeowner does all the work on the lot. The town does all the work off the lot. Done. Option A. We try to come away from that a little bit with some support options, and the main thing we do to get from option A to something that's a little more helpful to the homeowners is we start to provide some technical support. Anything from helping the homeowners select and purchase the pumps to specifying those pumps, maybe even giving them some model contracts to use for contracting, and other ways that we can help support them. But it's really just management support that we get there. The point where you start to get into money is when you get into option C, you start talking about communities that offer a credit. And this is the theory where, because the low pressure, property serviced by a low pressure sewer is experiencing a higher on-lot cost than a property serviced by a gravity connection, some communities say we're going to defray that cost. And one way you can defray that cost is you can offer a credit. The challenge we have for your project is those communities that offer that credit traditionally offer that credit against the betterment or the sewer assessment. Your project doesn't have betterments because you voted to not have betterments for the project. It's not really a very applicable option for your project. Option D, and this is pretty commonly done as well in the industry right now, a lot of towns choose to buy the pumps and give the pumps or sell the pumps for a nominal cost, like $1, to the homeowners. This gives the town the ability to make sure that the homeowners buy the right pump. You can get mass purchase procurement. You can save money on the mass purchase procurement. You can get better ability to drive service and support from the manufacturers and the distributors of the pumps, and it gives you a lot of control. Yet it still leaves the on-lot work as the responsibility of the homeowner, which is a good option we go
And do you
with.
have a price for that?
We'll get to that.
All right,
Is that-
okay.
if I can hold back on your
All right.
question, so.
No.
So, Erica, if you flip to the next. So then you get into a little more invasive, and these, if you notice, these kind of go from less expensive options, total cost, to more expensive, and less responsibility and less kind of risk for the town to more risk for the town as we go. So then you get into these ones where the town has to take a bigger role. So the next thing you can do is the town can actually buy the pumps, and in addition, you can coordinate the install. You can set up mass contracts where homeowners still contract for it, but you set up the contracts and support the homeowners on it. You can also do that, and in addition to installing the pumps, you can provide some credits on top of that as well. The place where you kind of start to wander into an area that's of significant concern for the town is these last couple options where you start to talk about the town actually taking responsibility for installing the work on private property. When we first started doing low pressure sewers in the region, this is what most of the communities did. And they did this because the funding agency said, if you install the work and maintain the work on the private property, we'll pay for it, we'll fund it. it'll be part of your funding option. But the challenge is you start to have the town doing a lot of work on individual properties. It starts to get into questions of easements, questions of liability, a lot of things that you find yourself wanting to walk away from when you're a town, and kind of leave that up to the homeowners to deal with the things on their own property. So the main option difference between G and H here is who operates and maintains the system. And the very last option, this option H, would be an option where the town would actually not only install the pumps, but would also support operation and maintenance of the pumps on the properties. I had to footnote this because in our discussions, we need to make sure that we know that this is a very challenging thing to do. The communities who started doing these things found that the costs and the impact on their staffing was very challenging to do this. So we usually, even though the industry started at that point, we very seldom see anybody wanting to take that on at this point in time. So Erica, if you flip to the last slide.
So if it's not paid for by the town, this is a cost to the homeowner to maintain them.
Right.
And so how do we know that there's this, one thing about what town doing it is it's up to a certain specification, and as if the correct maintenance done, I assume there may be less, preventive maintenance is done, you may have longer life, and have you factored that into
And some of that is better, some communities would say to you that that's better left to the homeowner because the homeowner can make that judgment. A homeowner who does good PM on their pump and doesn't abuse the system by flushing whatever they want to flush and assuming it's just going to get through there, those homeowners are going to be rewarded with a pump that's more reliable. The homeowners who abuse the pump or don't maintain the pump are going to have a pump that's going to fail more often. So there's a little bit of a natural fail-safe to that. The challenge with
These are all people that don't have pumps now, who've never been in the business of maintaining their pumps.
Well, some folks do, and a lot of septic systems actually incorporate a pumping system. And so some folks actually do right now have pumps. And in fact, a lot of the folks in the areas where you look for enhanced treatment in your septic systems already have fairly complex septic systems that use energy. They have pumping systems and other operable systems. So it's not a really drastic change for those folks.
And I'm making an assumption, but maybe it's wrong, is you were saying some of these communities rolled all this into one cost because it was all, but at that point, wasn't 90% of this paid by the state or the feds?
Absolutely. So that was when there was grant money.
It was grant money. So that dried up, which is why people have gone to betterments and other things.
Right.
So that's something that's 20 years old. That's not something that's sort of happening now.
Yeah.
And I think I just take that, in my head, I just take that right off the table.
Right.
We have trouble doing what we do. You don't want to add 3 more people working all day long. I just think it comes right off the table.
And I can tell you, even the towns that did take it on, even though they got grant money and there was a good reason to do the decision at the time, they were sorry afterwards.
Yeah.
Almost I can't think of one I deal with that took it on and now says, yeah, it was a good idea. They all say, I wish I never did it.
Yeah, so the customer, the residents are going to pick up the phone and say, it's not working again, come on out. So.
It blurs the lines of responsibility for what happens on private property, and that's a challenge for every community. So what we came down to is we did recognize, as Libby said, we spent some good time on this and talking about the options and the impacts. We spent some time talking about the fact that there's a cost differential here for someone who's going to be on low pressure versus on gravity. And, there is a realization that the town does potentially have the ability to mitigate these impacts. It does appear that, as we've said before, there's money in the budget to address this issue. It's part of the overall money that we have available. So we came up to a kind of a initial recommendation to float by the board here, that the town would go with pretty much that option D that we identified, which is the town would purchase the grinder pumps. We would coordinate a procurement contract that would allow us to make sure that a good set of pumps are picked that are appropriate for the project, that the purveyors of those pumps have the ability to provide good support for homeowners. We can come up with a system whereby the town handles the cash and the homeowners get the pumps delivered as they need to install. And to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, the cost range we've put on that is $4,000 to $6,000. It's a little
include the providing technical support.
There's some good support on there as far as the contracting piece because there's a little bit of extra. This would actually be the way we do the pump purchases. It wouldn't be part of the original construction procurement. We would actually do a separate procurement for the pump supply. and then it would be administered a little separately. So that budget includes a little bit of money in there for that too. If you bought these pumps, traditionally, if you bought these pumps on the mainland, they're still running like $3,500, maybe a little bit more. That cost goes up a little bit to ship them out to the island and get the support out here. So I think, our real par value here is the middle of that range, somewhere around $5,000. So we're talking about, when you look back at the number I gave you on the first slide of 260, and this range, we're talking about a total cost on the order of maybe $1.3 million, less or more, depending upon where we come in. So the main thing we want to get to with this is, as we try to proceed with wrapping up the project, this is not something that has to happen for us to finish design or go to bid, but it is something that has to happen in the schedule as we go for us to make a decision. So one, we can educate the homeowners in the property or in the service areas of what's going to happen on their property. And that's part of our ongoing public outreach process that Libby mentioned. That I'll poke one more time at the end here. The second thing is, obviously, as we get into the summer and the residents who are actually going to be served by these areas will be here in their entirety, I think we're going to have the ability to get information out to folks about what's going to happen with the project. And that's the appropriate time for you folks to think about, making sure that we're ready to advise people of what we want to do. Certainly, if the board has a strong feeling, be great to have a decision or at least guidance on going forward.
Matt? May I have a few questions, if I may? How of those 400 properties, how many have already put in IA systems?
Roberto was here somewhere. I don't know if he left. There he is. Do you know Roberto? Before I call you up, so.
I would venture, just for the people on TV, I would venture a guess to be more around 10%. It's not much. When we knew this was on the ballot for town meeting, we started pushing the ACO and pushing back the enforcement of IAs. So most people have done Band-Aid repairs.
So there's probably, if it's 10% of 400, you're at 40, but
at the most.
But then it's only 60% of these are going to be on this. So we're talking 6 or 10 homes have spent the money for the expensive system.
Yes.
So that's I got that one.
Yeah.
Number two, what's the comparison between the cost for an IA system to a septic system to our recommendation here for these homeowners?
What is the recommendation number for the sewer right now?
It's that we take care of it. So.
Oh, the IA system is
40 to 70 to 100.
more.
Yes.
Way more, 50 to 100,000, depending on the size of the house and the system.
Yeah. Okay. And then if we set this as a precedent, what's the cost if Nantucket and other places come in? We're talking 1.3 million for 260. How many more of these, if we paid the full boat, are we going to pay?
David's rough guess is about 300 to 400 properties in Nantucket. I think the last I saw
Clarify that. 200 to 300 need low pressure?
And that's the thing. The last I saw, a lot of Nantucket was going to be low pressure.
Yes. Yeah, see.
Right, so it's
All right,
pretty good likelihood that the high amount of that is.
Yeah.
So there would certainly be a cost there.
Yeah, so if we make, and then the other question I have is, when you guys are having a discussion, how do you allay the septic people who are already kind of clamoring that they're not getting anything? If we're saying, look, so those are the questions as a board we have to be thinking about. There was, the septic was saying, you're doing 100% betterment, you're doing nothing for us. What is I have a pump on my septic and you're not doing anything for me. So I think that's one of my concerns. And then the additional cost to the ratepayers, we're adding 1.3 here, we're adding 2 to 3 million in Nantucket, we're adding whatever we add whenever we do anything else. Us as a board have to be thinking about it.
That's under the assumption that Nantucket will ever be sewered.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah. Could we go back and when you say added, maybe I missed it. I thought part of this was that we were talking about a capital cost of the grinders.
Correct.
Not the operating cost.
Correct.
So I just want to make the distinction.
Understood. So we make a vote and we're paying for the capital costs, and then we say, well, on top of that, we need to come up with another 1.3. So we're going to do all the work we're going to do, which was 30 million, and now we need another, or whatever it was, now we need another 1.3.
Oh, you mean to buy the grinders?
To buy the grinders.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I
and
understood
if we
what you-
pay it all. So where I'm sort of going with it is, I'm thinking that we should buy the grinders for people who have already installed IA systems. And the people who haven't installed, we're going to have these huge costs. They were facing $50,000 to $100,000 each. They just got 100% of this cost. That a lot of it should have been bettered in my mind, but they're going to have a lot of costs, but it's going to be a lot cheaper than if they had to put an IA system in. And then we're not going to have Nantucket clamoring to do it. And I just, that would be my suggestion, but I'm willing to listen.
Yeah, I would just to clarify where we come from, it is, and I think I've said this at your past meetings, it is extremely unusual in the region, not just the state, in the region now, to have a sewer project with no betterments at all. You are, as far as I know, the only
Keep saying that all you want. We've already gone down that road, so let's move on with that, okay? I don't want to...
Don, did you have
Let's not repeat that
one at a
mistake.
time, please. One at a time.
Well,
Dawn.
I had a potential suggestion, which was that we purchase all of the grinder pumps for the project, and the people who've installed IAs already get full credit back. They get it for free. And the people that have not installed the IAs, there's a flat set fee for those pumps. Like, I know I put in a separate water meter, and I went to the water company, I think it was around $700. I mean, that's just an example. I mean, maybe these would be $3,000. I don't know exactly what the fee would be, but that we give them the benefit of buying them all in bulk and having them all be the same and up to a certain specification.
You can do a very wide range of things. Certainly you can design this as you would. The only I would caution you on is when you start to charge people something that's very close to what they think they can buy it on the market for, it starts to change the discussion point a little bit. And I would suggest that if you're going to take that approach, I would always try to stick with something that we have at least cut half the price off the pump before you get into any of that range. Just to be cautious where you don't invite too much debate about whether you're really giving a benefit to folks
But you
or
can
not.
take the half off the list price. The list price is going to be $7,000. We're going to buy them in bulk, and they're costing us, 2.5, and we charge, or 3.5, and we charge $3. So we're only losing $500 a pump as opposed to $2,000 a pump. I mean,
Maybe the number's like 1,500 or something.
that's what I'm saying. You got to look at the numbers, but to give them, you want to give the incentive still.
Bobby.
Do you remember why we did this? Why we sewered this in the first place? Let's get back to what we're talking about here. I don't want to hear the word betterment again. Not why I'm talking anyway. You can say it after I get off it. We did this so that we would have clean ponds and harbors. The majority of these people in the Shimo area don't have failed systems. They have perfectly adequate working septic systems. When we went to town meeting and asked them to vote for this, we didn't tell them they were going to need injector pumps and it was going to be low pressure. We all said, it'll probably cost you 15 to 20 grand maximum to hook into it. You start buying pumps, it's substantially more. Then you got the privilege fee. Then you got the hookup fee. Then you got the engineering fee, because we haven't even talked about that yet. Are we going to make all these people have to have an engineer come in and do an as-built and tell us where every one of the cleanouts is in their property like we do right now? Because I can tell you that's a significant cost. So I want to know exactly what we're going to make people do, how much it's going to cost, and then we start figuring out what we're going to kick back, what we're going to give them, and what we're going to waive. Unfortunately, I'm not still going to be on this board when this comes around. But you're going to have a rebellion on your hands if you start saying to people, well, I'm sorry, now you got to hook in the sewer, and it's going to cost you $35,000. And Matt, people don't want to hear what you're saying about, well, if you put an IA system, they don't have to put an IA system in. They have a perfectly working septic system now. It's perfectly fine. They pump it every year or two. They maintain it. It works fine. Some of them have failed, but the majority of those homeowners do not have failed systems. They just happen to be in the harbor discharge zone.
Yes, they just happen to be in the harbor discharge zone. But at any property transfer, any new construction, any failure, any repair, anything like that, they have to upgrade to the IA. So either they pay $35,000 to connect to the sewer, or they pay $50,000 to install an IA, because we're requiring it as the Board of Health, and in Nantucket as well, according to the vote that we did last month.
Which is why we're never going to see sewer in Nantucket now.
We held in abeyance the new regulation until July of 2019. Assuming sewer will be brought up to
Let me just ask, is it true that the difference between the people in this sewer district
cost-wise to them, between the people that are on the gravity versus the grinder, is the cost of the pump? Or are there other differential costs between the two?
So there's
There's
three
electrical work,
there's three primary differences that we would normally cite. One is the pump is the biggest one that's tangible.
Okay.
It's clearly always a difference. There's a slight difference in the installation costs related to where you're going. The main reason we cite that is because frequently when we do low pressure, the houses sit further back from the road. They may have, you may have to get back to them through more landscaping, more driveways. So there's some install difference.
But does the project cost 4 to 6 include all of that stuff, or just the grinder?
Just the pump.
This is just the pump. This
So
is
I'm
just
trying
to defray the
understand
pump.
The
incremental costs between a gravity project,
Yeah.
gravity property and a grinder property
Yeah.
probably ranges from 5 to 10 to 12 maybe on a
that's a pretty
typical
wide
property.
range, so-
Well, it has to be wide because, for instance, we don't know what the electrical work is. If someone went in and said,
Okay.
I have a 60 amp service, I need to upgrade to a 200 amp service, and by the way, I'm going to do some other ancillary work because I got an electrician on site, he could spend $20,000. But it's not necessarily all related to the pump.
I understand, but it just,
So-
I mean, it's the, the homeowner has more of a differential in the cost than just the grinder.
Yeah.
And his neighbor in another neighborhood under the same project is not having to incur any of those costs.
Right. This is intended to defray the cost difference, not make it go away completely.
I understand, no,
Right.
but it doesn't, yeah, so it doesn't, it may defray it by half.
Right.
And how doesn't the pump have to be in a container or something?
Yeah, this is a pump in an enclosure, in a manhole type enclosure that's usually fiberglass or polyethylene outside, sunk in the ground, that's piped and plumbed in. Yeah.
Matt?
Yeah, and I think the other thing we have to remember is you're also got people who are septic systems that are paying everything. And then the next part about it is just because a system hasn't failed doesn't mean that it isn't doing harm to the environment. There's nitrogen that's not coming out, there are pollutants, there are surfactants, there's all your dish soap and everything else. So so that we are getting that benefit that we aren't going to get, Bobby. So I don't want people on the, watching this to think, oh, they're not failed, these things are perfectly fine. They're not perfectly fine. We wouldn't be doing this if they were. And I understand that people don't want to pay it, and I understand that it's unpopular for me to sit and say we should be doing betterments and we should be treating people fairly. I understand that's not popular with people who might have to pay a little more, but I think that we as a board have to, and I agree with Bobby, we have to look at all the numbers and make a fair decision for everybody, including the town, and so. Yeah, I'm not ready, I know what I'd like to do, but if people feel strongly, I'd like to get more numbers to work on it. And then Richard's got his hand up if we're acknowledging.
Yeah, we will. Just a second. Richard, would you like to make a comment or question?
Without using the term depends, bad choice of verbiage, will the property owner be allowed to utilize their existing septic tank as a pump chamber? The cost of putting in a pump chamber with destruction of property and the chamber itself can be substantial, whereas many homes, including mine, I'm using my septic tank as a pump chamber.
So one thing that's changing is we're reviewing, the town is reviewing, David's department is reviewing the sewer regulations right now. So things that would and wouldn't be allowed are still subject to discussion. But I will tell you, as someone who has designed a lot of these systems, I strongly discourage using existing septic tanks in the system. If the town was to allow using an existing septic tank to connect flows to the sewer system, we would want to see some significant testing of that tank. I think people would be disappointed to find out that we care more about whether the septic tank is watertight or not when it's going to go into the sewer system. But it is, point in fact, extremely important, because what happens is when we connect a lot of folks to the sewer, we get a heavy rainfall, the flows go up. And in fact, I'm talking with David about this very issue in addressing capacity at the plant. David had a day in, July last year? July last year, where the flows at the wastewater treatment plant in the middle of the summer went up to 10 million gallons a day, when they're usually under 2 million gallons a day because of extraneous flows. When you don't have tight systems, you get a lot of extraneous flows in the system. So while I appreciate the homeowner's desire to kind of make best use of what the facilities that you have are, we find over and over again that it's very challenging to incorporate older infrastructure. It's very hard to explain to one homeowner why his tank is okay and passed inspection, but another one didn't. So it's obviously something you have to think about. Our experience is if we were going to do a septic tank effluent pumping system, a step system, where the septic tanks were a key factor, we actually look much harder at doing that because then you have to put a tank in if you don't have a functional tank. And so we've done a lot of those systems, and I think then it's much more worthy of discussion. In this case, the grinder pumps that we purchase are self-contained units that are, a couple of feet in, 2.5, 3 feet in diameter, and we sink them in the ground in one piece. And to mobilize all the equipment and just drop it into the septic tank that you have in your property doesn't really save that much from what these self-contained units are when we go to install them. So there's some perception issues there. But I would say my general response is, without saying the word depends, very unlikely that we would be supportive of using existing septic tanks as pump
I think
chambers.
that's unfortunate.
It is.
Thank you.
And it's sad. It is, yeah.
So we have a recommendation. This is coming from town administration. Libby? This is a recommendation.
We are recommending this, yes.
So I don't know if, it sounds like there's
Town
a lot of.
recommendation is for the town to purchase the pumps
Correct.
and give them to the homeowners.
Yep.
Yes.
And that stops the town involved. The rest of the responsibility is the homeowner, the property.
Yeah, and
But
we're,
just to be clear on the. sort of the-
Everything else in the lot, the electrical upgrades and.
yeah, what we're trying to do, just so that you all know, is for our public outreach efforts, we're working to come up with some specific costs for people because we know it's of a lot of concern. So I jotted down a couple of numbers. The privilege fee is roughly $6,700, give or take a little. The pump itself is between $4,000 and $6,000. Let's call it $6,000. The connection fee is $2,000. The on-lot work can obviously range, from a little to a lot, depending on how far the house is from the road and the electrical system
Is
and all
there
that.
an average,
So let's
or-
just pretend it's around $4,000.
Well,
That's a guess.
We've thrown numbers out before in this meeting, and I think I've
Yeah,
said
we
5
get-
to 15
Okay.
probably is a pretty wide
700?
range. And a big thing of that is what your landscaping is. I mean, if you have a Belgian block driveway and you go
a
up,
lot
you're
of
going to
these
spend a
houses
lot
in
of
the
money.
Shimo area are 300-400 feet back off the road.
Yeah.
They're not up on the road. You gotta,
Right.
it's substantial. I'm
Yeah.
curious as to, do you need a bigger pump the farther away if you are from the main line?
Yep. And
And
that
they
the
have a
answer
lot
to that is
more than-
generally no. But to stick with the thought that you started with there, if you have a small home that's 50 feet back from the road and you've got a short service, it's very likely you could do it for under like Libby, you've thrown 4,000, probably less than that. But you start to develop averages because for every house like that, there's one that's back 1,000 feet.
Like I've done.
And it's going to be a big difference.
I've done a significant amount of
Right.
excavation work in my career, and I can tell you that if you gotta lay an injector pump, tie it into the present system, if you're gonna have, they're either gonna wanna remove the old tank or at least fill it with sand, then you're gonna have to reroute the pipe around it, probably go from the D-box, connect into the D-box, put your pump in, lay 200 feet of pipe, and then tie it into the road. That's at least 2 men, 2 days, and a piece of equipment at $150 to $250 an hour.
Right.
$4,000 is
Too short.
never going to touch it. You're looking at more like 8 to 10 minimum.
Right.
So
And that doesn't do anything with the landscaping that's got to be replaced either. I mean,
I think that's why Kent had previously been saying 5 to 15.
Big range, right.
Something like that. So taking that part of it out, it's going to be about $14,000 for the non, landscaping and all that. So it's just.
without landscaping.
Right, and the electrical upgrade and all that. So it's just going to depend on what your situation is above that, but it's going to be just about 14,000 is your
Right.
sort of base, and then you go from there depending on your situation.
So we have a recommendation from town administration. Is anyone who'd like to discuss it further or make a motion?
No, it just seems to me on the positive side, it establishes a difference between the grinder and the others. And sort of evens the playing field for all these folks. And Matt, I think the cost, once you're spending 40 million, another $1.3 million is just the way it is. And the B word is for the next project. This one's already sunk. So.
Yeah, well, I'll just respectfully disagree. I think that, I think we have to, from a, I compare it to what they would have to pay had they done an AI. And this is a huge savings from that. And if they had voted it down, that's what they'd be facing right now. And I think that, and so, the motion I would like to do is, and I could see I'm not going to win it here, but,
what's the motion?
Well, I would like to give them to the people who have existing AI systems.
So is that
And I
your
would like to
motion?
charge everyone else 50% for it.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
So is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Yeah. That's a good discussion point.
So, discussion? So what was your, so it's,
So if someone has already put in an AI system, then we're going to.
right, so that's 10 people or so.
Well,
10%.
whatever the number is, yeah. And in future, it's all the people in the future areas that have this. If they've put in AI systems, then we'll cut them a break on this. And they also cut them a break on the AI system. They let them stay longer on it. And then we would, sell the pumps to everybody else at a discount. But, I just think if the town, I think you have to recognize that not everybody is getting anything. There are plenty of people, I think it was about 2/3 of the people are on septic and don't get anything, and
We're all getting clean water.
Well, I understand, well, they are.
Wait
Bob.
5 years, we won't have a scallop left.
Well,
if that's where you want to go, let's go that route.
But it doesn't, Bobby, that isn't the issue, because there's other things we're doing now. We're building swimming pools and things, and we're adding hardscape that could cancel this
So
in
then
2
put
years.
an article in town meeting to ban swimming pools. I'll sign it. But that has nothing to do with, let's stick to what this is.
Well,
this is telling people
I was
that-
sticking to this. You went opposite.
all right.
But that's all right. That's how I feel. If I get voted down, I get voted down. But-
So just my own point of view is that's why it's the question about the differential expenses between the grinder folks and the gravity folks. So it's more than just the grinder. So we're only doing the grinder, and I would be comfortable with accepting the recommendation from town administration. So other discussion on this motion?
Let's make sure, I want to make sure I understand what you're saying, because there are other costs going to a grinder party, such as the electrical connections and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And you'd prefer to be able to have the town subsidize those as well?
No.
I'm not quite
just
sure
saying
where you're headed.
the recommendation is to do the grinder only.
Right.
Which is whatever that price is, which doesn't create an even playing field for the two parties. The grinder folks still have to pay other expenses, and I'm saying that they will. That will be. I'm not suggesting we pay those at all, because that lets us maintain the. We're not doing things on lot.
But the point of clarification, many of those expenses are going to be similar for someone who's going on a gravity. And many of those expenses are similar or even more expensive for someone putting in a new septic system. And so.
I didn't hear that. I heard electrical upgrades that.
No, I understood that's what you heard, but I'm telling you the reality. And so, it's not.
Explain it to me again. I didn't understand.
Okay. If someone is doing gravity feed, they're going to still face they're still going to have all the same landscaping costs.
As both parties.
Yes, as both parties. So you've taken your 14,000 and you've taken all that landscaping out. That's the same.
Yeah.
If you're doing a septic system, you're going to have landscaping costs. Maybe it won't be quite as much, but then the septic systems are very expensive. Not an AI system, but a regular system is very expensive. So you've got to be comparing those. And I just think that's.
Septic system? Yeah, 15,000 max.
Yeah. Yeah, but then landscaping and everything else.
In most cases, you don't even have to change the tank, you just have to put in another leach field. That's all you have to do.
So is there any other
I
discussion,
think that
Dawn?
we should purchase these pumps so that they're all the same and that they're of good quality. I think that some value should be placed on them because I think the appreciation for the piece of equipment that the people are getting becomes more tangible when there's some value, even if maybe it's a $500 fee. Maybe it's not 50%. But something where they appreciate what is being given to them and they'll take care of it in terms of the installation. So,
Any other discussion on the motion?
I wanted to say.
All those in favor of the motion, aye?
Aye.
Did you have
Well,
one other question?
I just find it interesting. I'm trying to understand. The motion at the moment is that and I'm trying to see how this ties into Dawn's point, which was a good point, so.
Except, I mean, the IA is, Matt's motion does give it to them completely for free.
Matt's motion is the IA is free, everybody else pays 50% of the cost.
Of list price,
Oh, I missed the 50%.
Yeah, I'm
That's
saying
what you
IA,
were saying.
exactly.
They pay something then, Dawn,
Yes.
right? Whether it's 50% or 25%.
Yeah, 50% from
Matt's motion is 50%, that's the motion.
If you want
we're
to talk
voting on.
about the percentage, we can talk about the percentage, but I would.
That'd be another motion.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Or an amendment to this.
Or you
an
can amend
amendment,
this if
yes.
someone feels strongly about that.
Yeah.
any further discussion before we take a vote? We're going to,
Just as a public member who's about to...
we're in the middle of taking a vote, so we'll,
Okay, I don't know how this works, so I'm just asking.
part of this at all.
Okay, so even if you have a public person who is going to be affected, I don't know how the rules work, so that's all I'm asking.
so let's take this vote, and then we're going to have further discussion. So all those in favor of Matt's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. So what was the? 3-2, all right.
I didn't vote.
It's 2-2.
Oh, what is your,
No.
what is your vote?
Do you want to change the percentage?
I would like to amend it.
Okay.
I would like to put
Well, we're voting on the motion, so you need to vote aye or no, nay on the motion.
She can tie and we can go to the amendment.
No, I'm just saying, but we need to vote from all members.
Well,
She just did, she abstained.
No vote.
I'll abstain.
And we're tied, so
then I'm gonna make
it dies for
an
lack of a
amended
quorum.
No, just,
Okay.
Okay,
okay,
that's
we're
fine.
not, just one person speaking, all right? So your vote is to,
I will abstain from
Okay,
that vote in
okay.
favor of making an amended proposal.
so is there no motion on the table? Is there another motion someone would like to make?
I'd like to make a motion that we set a fee for the people who have existing IA systems of $500 on the grinder pumps and a $1,500 fee on the people that did not install IA systems.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
So everyone pays something towards these pieces of equipment, and the IA people get them for $500, and the people who have not get it for $1,500. That's my
Is there a
proposal.
second to that motion?
I'll second it.
So discussion, if you could, Kent, is it?
Ken.
Kent, I have a question. So we've talked about two numbers. One is the town's cost for the grinder, and
Yeah.
one is the amount of money you could pay for a grinder on the Cape. And one is, I heard, like a retail cost, or?
Yep.
So what is, what,
Right now, the retails are running like 3,500 to 4,000 for the most part off island.
Okay, so what's-
I don't know.
what's the cheap-
David, you may know what they're running on island. It's probably a little over 4 is my gut.
Over 4, yeah.
Yeah.
About 4,500 on the
so
island
that's
now.
the cost to the town, or
town,
to
the
someone going out
It
individually?
would be the homeowner to buy it.
So what is your cost for us to go out and buy 400
We haven't,
of them?
we just had meetings last week with all the vendors. We haven't even made a final decision on which pump we're using yet. So we really can't set that number exactly. But we're talking within that same range. Between 3 to 5 is where we might be buying them from, depending on what brand we go to. We still, like I said, we still
So it
haven't
doesn't
made a
sound like, you
final.
know, I don't know if we can, personally, if we can assign a
Yeah.
charge, we don't know what your
Yeah,
cost is going to be.
It's, like I said, it's still in work. We just had a meeting last week with all the vendors to go over all the pumping. There's different types of pumps and the different head pressures and everything else. So it's still a work in motion until we make the final decision on which pump. But they're all going to still stay within that 4,000 to 6,000 range, depending on, you know, the market's moving every day as well on a lot of this stuff.
So Matt,
Yeah, but I don't think Dawn's motion doesn't require us to know because we're not doing it as a percentage, she's doing it as a flat fee. So we're gonna subsidize it we're gonna subsidize it, you know, if it's a $3,000 pump, we're subsidizing half, or if it's 5,000, we're subsidizing, you know, 3,500 of it. And so the motion doesn't really need to know that information.
It sounds like the amount is substantially enough less than
Well,
whatever the
less,
retail
that's what I
price
was
is.
thinking.
Yeah, she's given enough of a break on both of them.
And we could at a later date amend it if we had to. I don't
But
think we would have to.
this would give us a way to get started and make the presentations that way. So, So we have a motion and a,
I understand.
I'm just thinking out loud, yeah.
Yeah, I understand, but some of us are thinking
Make
we're
sure
ready to
everyone
make
gets their
comments.
questions
Yeah, I'm not always ready to vote either,
Can I-
Mr.
can I make a
Chairman.
comment?
I guess, you know,
before we
I know,
vote, Mr.
I know
Chairman?
town administration spent a lot of time and staff effort, and as a chair, I've always, you know, listened to that, and obviously, we can decide anything we want, but, so I would continue to support the town administration's recommendation. Bobby?
Mr. Chairman, a couple things. First of all, we still haven't talked about what the engineering fees are going to be on this. You know, what are the requirements we're going to put on these people? Are we going to make them have surveys of all this pipe when it's put in the ground? We're going to need to know where every clean out is. Because that's a substantial cost, especially if they got to run 200 or 300 feet of pipe. The second is, if my septic system fails tomorrow, I can go and get a loan. What is that called, Richard? The septic, yeah. There's no sewer betterment fund for these people. If they've got a $25,000 bill,
They can use the betterments to connect to sewer as well.
well, how much
Yes.
money's left in that account?
We
Because
just
you're
got
gonna
the
have
new.
100
We just
people
put
in
$1 million into it.
We just put in an extra $1 million last month.
I think that, you know, we're never going to, if we make everybody pay for every bit of this, and we start talking the way we're talking, like, we're never going to ever see Nantucket sewer, and I'll tell you why. It's not the 400 people in Nantucket. It's the people on Somerset that are year-round people that are not going to want to pay $35,000 for one of these systems, or $20,000, or even $15,000 when they have a perfectly working septic system. And those people don't have to put IA systems in when they fail. We're not making them doing it. We're making the Nantucket people do it, the people in the harbor watershed. You know, that's why we lost so badly at the vote. Those are the people that came out and said, I am not paying for all this. So, you know, I think we need to work with these people. The benefit to the town in the next 100 years is so substantial to put all these properties on sewer that we're being short-sighted right now, worrying about who's getting what for nothing and who's getting off better than the other person here. We're only shooting ourselves in the foot.
So as I hear the answers to the questions from staff, I'm concerned that you're not going to have, if I was a homeowner in this area, I would want to know more than, about a $14,000 base, but, you know, we don't know about engineering, we don't know about this and what pump we're getting, and I'm concerned that you're going to create a lot of uncertainty.
So we're going to answer those questions as best we can, but remember, it's always a wide range for on-lot costs. The more we try to nail that cost down, the more wrong we'll be.
Okay.
And I don't think that's a fair way to approach a homeowner. I think we have to tell them it's very subjective, and we'll give them as much help as we can, and we'll spend time talking with them. But there's no way we can say it's going to be $13,300 for everybody. It just will be wrong. We can't do that.
So, any further discussion on the motion? So all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no?
No.
No. The motion passes 3-2. Anything else, gentlemen?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. I wonder 100 years ago when they put sewer down the street, if they worried about who was going to pay for it, or they did it because it was the right thing to do.
I think they did it because they were going to the bathroom in the backyard, Bobby.
Yeah, well, we're pretty much doing the same
Providing a
thing.
piece of equipment.
So
Because nobody
anything
on this
else?
board is having
We
to
are
pay
out of
for it.
time. So
I'll offer you just a couple of follow-up thoughts. One is Roberto did finally come back up with, he had an actual number. There are 18 IA systems in the Shimo area. So just for background, it didn't change anything.
But not all of them require grinders.
No, we don't. Yeah, we don't know yet. Some fraction, probably a good number of them, because most of Shimo is low pressure. So just a couple of punches up at the end. Libby mentioned a few of these things already. There's a couple things that are going to be new. The next steps and looking forward for you. One that is going to come in front of you in April. Right now, looking like probably the third meeting, April 19th or so, is we need to take easements on the private roads that are getting sewers installed in them, and that's going to come before you as the folks who deal with the easement taking process. So that's going to be on the books. We're going to be coming in front of you, like I said, probably the 19th of April, most likely. Second thing that's coming up in discussion point, and we'll probably be talking as we go forward more with you, and if you talk to homeowners, you'll be hearing this already, is There have been arising concerns with storm drainage on some of the private roads that we're dealing with. People worried that their drainage systems aren't working, and we're going to go in and do sewers, and what can we do about drains? We're analyzing that problem now. We're working with both David's office, Public Works, and Town Administration, and talking about how those problems can be dealt with. So I believe there'll be some reports back to you in the near future on that. The last one is...
I'm not sure I followed that. Could you try that again?
So a lot of the private roads have localized flooding because they don't have good surface drainage when it rains.
Right.
Currently, not
And so they're...
regardless of the sewer.
Right.
And not that part.
It's relatively unrelated to the sewers, but the worry is that we're going to go in and build sewers, and we're not going to be able to fix that problem, which could be dealt with concurrently. So we're trying
So
to...
there may be a way to fix some of those problems in the process.
When we're digging up the road.
Yeah, okay, I just want to
Well,
understand. I didn't.
But we want to be very careful. We had a lengthy discussion about this yesterday, because part of the problem in some of these private areas is there's nowhere to put the stormwater.
Right.
There's no
Yeah,
public
right.
area there. And also, it's really kind of outside the scope of the sewer.
So
Yes.
if you.
We just don't want to make it worse.
Burn the
Right.
road a little bit, it goes off to the edge, that maybe is better than
Right.
Well,
pooling on the road, I don't know.
Some of these areas, it just won't drain. Even if when we
Yeah.
get it to the shoulder, it won't
and,
drain.
And you know where they are, Friendship Lane,
Yeah.
for example.
Yeah,
So the plan is to, I don't want to jump in.
Go ahead.
But
No, go ahead.
I think the plan is to inspect all of the drainage structures that are in these areas that are close to where the sewer is, or adjacent to where the sewer lines are going to be going, to clean them and to repair anything in them that is broken. We're not replacing them, we're not improving them, but we would repair something if it's broken.
I think that's helpful to go through, because I think Friendship is different than a dirt road in Shimo. Right. You know, and I think
Yeah.
Friendship, you know, you can feel the vibes, it's coming right after the boulevard. And if we can save money by taking care of them now, I'd say get it over with.
Well,
You know,
I think
I'm
we're.
trying to be realistic.
Yep, DPW, I think we probably have three pretty well-known areas where there are some problems that are in the sewer extension project scope, and DPW is looking actively, or will be, as to how we could potentially fix it. There may not be an easy fix.
Right, but I'm just making a point, if there's something you can do, I think this
Yep.
board ought to be receptive. It's coming our way anyway, at least on that road. Now, maybe
And
not
at some
on the other.
Yeah, you know, I was not thinking of roads like that when you.
I wasn't either,
I was
but
thinking of
that's
like Shimo Pond Road,
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
you know, a dirt road, which,
Yeah.
I was thinking the main thing is you don't want to put the pipe too close to the surface so that when they go and scrape it with a grader, it doesn't hit the pipe.
Right, it's like the Comcast cable in my road, it disappears all the time, so I hear it. But this is different, and if this is what we're talking about, so, okay.
I'm actually glad to hear we're thinking ahead and doing both things at once. I mean, that's the stuff that
Yeah.
we've talked about. I think that's really good. We
Yeah,
might, but we're looking at it.
We're thinking
We're
about it.
looking
Yeah,
at
we're
it.
thinking about it, and that's a huge,
Think more about it and come back and talk
I'm
to us
giving,
about it.
yeah, I
I'm
think
All right?
giving kudos. That's a huge,
Accelerate
good
that
thing.
Yeah.
That's a
Well, there might be
positive.
some collaboration that could be done with the neighborhood associations
Yeah,
and
that's
the,
a positive.
and the town together when you're doing this work.
Correct, and we've talked to at least one that has, I think for example, a thought might be, could the homeowners association purchase new drainage structures and we put them in? But we still have the issue of where does the stormwater go,
Or
so.
might a property owner grant an easement for water to drain onto a piece of their property?
Maybe, but, or they wouldn't, I mean, it's not a town road, so that we wouldn't be granting us anything.
Right, but it's kind of like the Boulevard, they did a lot of fix-up before we agreed to do what we're doing.
Correct.
So Friendship could
Yes.
face
A
the
lot of
same kind
times
thing.
too, it's just the design of the drain. I mean, where I live on Sasapana, where my house is, there's a drain on each side of the road, and the drain on this side drains under the road to this one, and there was just a catch basin there.
That's all there is.
So as soon as it rains, they fill up. So I dug a 8-foot trench parallel to it through the woods in my yard, in my property, punched a hole in the catch basin and filled it with riprap, and now I have no more lake in front of my house. So if you can get an owner to let you do that, you know.
That's great. Yeah.
I just
okay.
did it.
Ken, anything else?
But I'm on a private road, so I just call it.
Good for you.
Okay, Ken, anything else?
Nothing else heavy
Okay.
technical. I just want to punch up one more time. Public meeting on the 14th next week at the CPS.
Okay.
We're continuing the public outreach. That meeting is one thing. We have another article appearing in the paper tomorrow. and you're going to continue to see some articles coming through the paper. And we do look forward to coming back and giving you some further briefings as the project proceeds.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. The next item, Selectmen reports and comments. First item is Board of Selectmen action regarding comments and recommendations on the 2017 Annual Town Meeting warrant articles. You have in your packet, I don't know if you have it separately, or it's in the comments that we made on 2 articles last time. We went through all of the articles, except there were some that I know didn't have a FinCom recommendation. So do you want to, let's just go look at the comments that we made on and what articles were those, Libby?
The ones that I think you talked about in particular were 14 and 18.
Yeah, so our Island Home, which was, I thought, the draft I read, I thought was a well-written comment, so. I don't know about the rest of it.
So we need to vote on that. I've heard that same from other members.
Can you put that up? Those draft comments?
And we're working off the draft that came this afternoon, is that?
Either in the addendum or the complete
Well,
packet.
it was
No,
emailed to you.
It was emailed.
Okay,
to
this
us.
afternoon we got it.
Well, you got the draft warrant.
Yeah, we got the
comments were
email,
emailed yesterday or the day before, Monday, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
so the comment hasn't changed in the?
No.
No.
Okay, I see.
But the one today had some, we were still waiting on comments on some of the other articles. Did those come on that
The only comments that,
there was still a couple that were waiting.
We're waiting for motions, but it's up to us to come up with the comments if we have any.
the warrant that you got, the most recent warrant that you received has all the FinCom motions in it.
Okay.
And I don't know.
So we'd like to take action on these 2 comments and then go back, and if you've read the current warrant and have other comments, we'll address those at that time. So is there a motion to approve the comment on Article 14?
Yeah, I'll make that
Is
motion.
there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And then the comment on Article 18?
I'm not sure. I got it
At
right.
14, I'm
Together.
opposed to 14. It doesn't matter, but,
And 18 is the,
yeah, I'm
oh,
opposed.
18 is my favorite article.
I'm trying to find 18, 17.
I guess you don't have the comments in your packet or in any addendum packet. They were emailed separately, and we don't apparently have them for the
No, there's
projection.
comments here. I loaded the complete packet.
Yeah, I did, but not on 18.
18 doesn't have our,
The
Oh.
comment, yeah, the comment is this.
you want to read Libby, you want to read the comment?
Sure.
Okay.
No, I'll let you read it. Is this the comment on the
That's
island?
14, yeah, sorry. The comment for 18, draft, to
Yeah.
you, the FinCom has given a motion, and I think you've all seen it or heard about it. The Board of Selectmen comment, the parcels contained in the article should logically have been included within the scope of the original project. However, they cannot be added at this point without a vote of town meeting. The board supports the inclusion of these properties to the scope of this project. We do not expect further properties to be added. The board notes that while the authorization to assess betterments has been removed in the Finance Committee motion to this article, parentheses, and the board is no longer seeking that authorization for this specific project, it does not want to preclude the possibility of betterment assessments for future projects and/or properties that are not part of the scope of an existing project.
I think that map.
That's perfect for me.
Okay.
Yeah, that last sentence sounds like it was changed, right?
Yeah, it was.
So somebody did that, thank you.
Oh, I didn't, but someone
I
did.
don't know who did it, but I think that.
I just cobbled it
that was the
together
that
from
was the
comments
sense
that
of
you
the
guys made
group.
at the last
I think it
meeting.
was.
Yeah.
I just don't remember reading it in the
Oh,
first
okay,
draft.
okay.
Anyway, good, that's good.
Okay. Any questions on that? Is there a motion to approve that comment?
I'll make that motion.
There a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That's unanimous. And now is an opportunity for us to, if you've read the warrant and you have comments on any other motions, now would be the time to raise them.
Is it on now?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask this board to put the CPC money back in for Academy Hill. I think that the CPC extremely vets their projects, and if they felt it was important enough to put in, that we should put it in. By the way, it is our building, so, it's not like it's not.
Where's the FinCom motion? What page is that
It's,
on?
in the warrant itself, it's on, the part you're talking about is on page 44.
And what about in our packet? Do you know?
I can tell you in a minute, Jim.
Thank you. I would like to see that put back in too.
You weren't here, Don, when we
Say?
talked about it last time.
So how do we
It's
do?
on page 319.
How do we accomplish that?
Well, the motions are done.
Right.
So you could make a comment and/or a floor amendment. 37.
It's on 319 in the packet. 44 is the page, I think.
I don't think I mind putting it back in, but could we just review, I thought I heard the FinCom's primary problem was this was a for-profit party that's then excused from making the expenditure. Bobby, I'm not fighting putting it back in, I just think we ought to be clear about what seemed to have been one of their concerns. And we're saying that's a concern, but we're overcoming that, or we choose to.
Yeah, I think it was saying that it should come out of their management. They're going to expend X amount of dollars, $1 million or so dollars. And then they sought additional for historic, for the windows, and FinCom didn't support that. But I've heard so much. In fact, they did discuss it.
No, with all
they
due
did
respect to
discuss-
FinCom, Satcham's Path is a for-profit organization too. Now,
But
gave them plenty of money.
But they did make a comment at the meeting yesterday that I thought was somewhat of an accommodation.
Well, they, the 200 or so thousand, 250, 600 would just fall to a housing reserve.
Oh, that's right, okay.
Yeah, it just goes back in the housing reserve.
So it will not be
Right.
utilized for anything when it could be doing some
Right.
good. And I think that there are some concerns with the management and maintenance of that building, and I'm hoping that we're moving towards reconciling those and moving forward in a positive way. But getting this work done sooner is only going to benefit the residents that are living there.
Right.
And I think there's a fair amount of agreement along that,
And I
along
think
those lines.
the other reason I think to do it is we still have a lease to negotiate with them, and we're just making our own job harder. Let's show good faith and put this money back in and then keep going.
So we want to comment that says.
Look, I'm in favor of
Go
it. Could I
ahead.
just say something?
Right,
It seems to me we're talking about a lease that, as I recall, the capital funds made available out of the refinancing for this building were what, $1.7 million or something? Were a lot of money. And this is so one thought, this is just whoever's going to negotiate this lease, maybe we should get that back out of there. And so we're fronting the money, we get the job done. It's probably already in their capital items they want to spend that $1.7 million on.
Now, he's
He's going to go back and refinance it from.
They were claiming it was more than $1.7 million. They were claiming it was two something.
I believe that.
Yeah,
All right, that's fine, I just want to be
Building
clear, thanks.
Yeah.
And we already did take action on that lease, is that correct?
We
David?
have, the last action the board took was to respond to Mass Housing about some information we wanted to have dealt with before we negotiate the lease, and that letter has been
Yeah, I don't
sent.
think
At least not done.
All right.
Don't forget too, the reason I want to put this back in is, it's not just about it's about the historic, this money's going in under historic, it's not coming out of housing. I believe it's going in under historic preservation. Is it not, Don?
No, it's under community housing.
Well, then we're getting two bangs for the buck,
Yeah.
because this is an historic building, and these are historic windows. You can't just stick an Anderson window in there, you have to still do the old
I think we've got
wooden.
agreement that
So I
we
said, I'm in
want
favor of doing
Yeah.
it, I just want to understand the
Okay.
dynamics.
to. So I hear everyone's in favor, so what kind of a
What-
comment do we make to it?
Well, why don't we make a comment, something to and because this will be printed and people will read it.
Yeah.
So we could make a comment, I'm just thinking out loud, something like, the Board of Selectmen intends to move on town meeting floor to reauthorize or ask to put back in $250,000 as the CPC requested in the first place to fix these windows, or something like that.
Yeah,
So
I
then
think
we're telling
that's-
them, because we're gonna have to.
And it's
take
right
that
up
action.
front without a lot of, analysis.
Yeah,
and-
just boom.
What do you all think about that?
Yeah, it could say, while we share the concern, the FinCom concerns, we believe that,
We don't share their concerns.
Well, I think we sort of
I'm
do,
sort of
but
kidding.
I think we've got to, yeah, there's a way to say it.
You might want to note that the work gets done before the funds get
Right.
released
Yeah, that's
as
all-
well.
for all the
So
projects,
it's,
yeah.
it's very
Right.
well monitored.
Yeah. All right, so that's
got
a,
it.
you got it, and we don't need to vote on it separately, no? Consensus?
I think we ought to vote on it.
Well, we don't have it
Yeah,
in
can-
writing, so
well,
you want to vote on?
I'm sorry.
Do you want me to
Well,
read
okay.
it, or?
Oh, you read what you have?
I'll-
Okay.
At the 2017 annual town meeting, the board intends to move to request restoration of the funds removed by the Finance Committee in its motion for the, and I'll just.
Yeah, the name of the
note
project,
item.
whatever.
Okay.
I'd make that
Would you make is there a
I'll
second?
second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you for bringing that up, Bobby. Other comments on any other motions from board members? So far. Anything else from anyone?
Did people attend the FinCom when they were talking about the road takings? And what was the tenor and the discussion of those? I see the wording in most of them are, all this stuff will be taken care of first, but was there any discussion of the ongoing, maintenance and upkeep and, all that stuff?
So you're distinguishing which ones, the road.
Well, there
which
was
ones
two or
are
three. I
example?
can't keep track of all
I was
our
there for
numbers.
some of the discussion about
yeah.
the ones that were the more Surfside type.
Right.
I'm trying to think of a non-Surfside type article which has maintenance issues. The Marianne Lane and the Richmond ones, are those the ones you're
Yeah,
thinking of?
there was there, and there was some
So
outside of there.
those will
too.
come back to us
Yeah.
separately after town meeting when if it's passed, all those terms will be negotiated by the board.
Right, but I guess the question I'm having is, when we talk about, we're gonna take these roads.
Yeah.
And, I'm finding the word, what number, give me one of the numbers, I could read
I
it.
think they're up like 100.
Yeah, it was near the
97.
end, 97, okay.
95, 96, 97,
Is there a page number in the packet?
It's near the very end, yeah.
Okay.
98.
Yeah, but I'm just sort of, I didn't get a chance to attend, and
Yeah,
I'm wondering what the conversation was.
I didn't hear that part either, Matt. So these are clearly different from the other normal ones we'll talk about in Surfside. They're a private developer wishing to turn over roads to the town, presumably in pristine condition, and they're asking us to pick up the ongoing maintenance costs
Yes.
of those
Well,
roads. In
I-
effect, are they?
So
or-
Well,
it's a little more complex than that. There's,
Yeah.
I don't know.
there's gifts to be taken,
Well, I don't think they're asking anything except that the town take the road. So if that means the maintenance, then that's what that means. However, what I've heard from Richmond is they've publicly stated they'd be willing to enter into a maintenance agreement with the
Okay,
town.
so we're clearing title in some ways by the taking.
Yes.
Is that-
but it's accepting, just in speaking to Andrew, he's ready to come back after town meeting, if this is approved, and lay out all of the decisions we have to make in terms of accepting those roads.
And the condition, and
And
then
the con-
you
all
all
those- all
are
the
going to
We
have
conditions.
don't have to take it.
No.
Right.
yeah.
But it's permissive, not.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So if we
yeah.
don't like the agreement, we can just say we're not
Right.
taking it.
Okay, that's good. And I just hadn't heard the thing you just mentioned, Libby. So,
Right, yeah, and part of it, it's, they're gonna, acquire eminent domain, they'll reimburse the town for engineering, legal, and other costs. And I was asking, was the conversation at FinCom about the future forward costs? I mean, the boulevard, first way's $3 or $4 million, the boulevard's $6. I mean, these things are not cheap. And the ongoing maintenance on them is not cheap. And so I want to make sure that as a town and as a FinCom, we are, really making sure it's up to snuff before we get it, or signing a maintenance agreement with somebody and just not taking off more than we can chew. That's all.
I remember talking about that with them prior in regard to potential maintenance.
But I didn't attend I was there for other topics. I didn't hear the FinCom talk about that.
Right. Well, as long as that's the intent, and if we don't have to put it in, there, great, but I just want to make sure that we've got a lot of other costs and, you know.
Yeah. Any other comments you'd like to make on the warrant before we adopt it? Anybody willing to make a motion to adopt the warrant?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, no? Thank you. The next item is review of the draft policy regarding current R. Allen Homes site and proposed new facility. If you remember, we spoke about this last week, or last 2 weeks, and we directed town administration to ask the architect to develop a synthesis of the various consultants' reports, and also to begin to identify the cost to implement a couple of options of keeping the island home on site. Contiguous to that, the R. Allen Home Building Committee has met. I would say it's a very robust committee. They've taken this task on themselves. We've had two lengthy meetings with the architect, giving him input on how to look at this draft report and make some additional revisions. Those revisions will be coming back to the building committee next Tuesday. But we're happy to hear from board members on the comments you may have on the draft report that's in your packet. But knowing, and this will inform and give some comment to the building committee, and our chairman, Dave Fredericks, is here if you have any questions or comments about the work that group is doing. So I'll just open it up to questions or comments you might have, or we could wait until we get a further developed report in a week. It's your pleasure.
I look forward to reading the report. I admit I have, in the scope of 550 pages, I didn't get to that one. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, I think it's good. I was happy to see some numbers attached. I'd like to see operational numbers attached to the various options, and cost of money over time, and this is the different aspects, because some of these are going to take longer than others, and I think it's important that we put numbers to it. It's a lot of the Island Home stuff now is emotional, but it's got to be emotional, but it's also got to be, we've got to be able to afford it. So I think it's really, we've got to balance the two. So I'm happy to see us doing this.
Dave, if you'd like to come up and make any, not to put you on the spot, any comments you might have, or how you see the process going?
Dave Fredericks, so I really didn't have a lot of comments prepared. I would say that we looked at the report, and Matt would say, I think the committee felt that there needed to be more work done, more rigor put around several things. We really think it comes down to focusing on three options. There are two that need to be thoroughly understood, really from a financial standpoint. I think many of the really key decisions, the board's indicated where they're at, and so it becomes this kind of review about, could you build in a way and somehow, an adjacent to or as part of the existing building? Could you relocate, the front building and somehow build between the two, and then can you build on Maya Comet? And so we're building a timeline. We've built a plan on how you do all three. We're in the process of pricing them out well enough to understand at least the general impacts. What are the impacts of time? What might be the impacts on the residents? And then you turn that into a final answer. And so that's where we had just said that, we needed probably 4 or 5 more days to finish that rigor. And I think it'd be a good way to tie all of it together and get people talking about, to your point, the real financial impacts just as much as the things that have been talked about to date.
Anything else? Thank you, sir.
Got it.
Our next item is the presentation of the final report from our Island Home Work Group. That report is in your packet, and hope you all had a chance to review it. It's very thorough, and Fran Cartington is here to give the final report to the board. Welcome, Fran.
Thank you. Members of the board, Town Manager Gibson. The voters at the November special town meeting passed Article 5 mandating the formation of a work group, quote, to resolve financial and otherwise unanswered questions or open issues related to the relocation, design, staffing, site control, and demographics of our island home. And the work group has met weekly since its formation. In the first weeks, the position of member-at-large chosen by the town government was filled by 3 different individuals, but otherwise the original members have carried on through. The membership of the work group includes the administrator of our island home, 1 current and 2 previous members of the Board of Selectmen, 1 current and 3 former members of the Finance Committee, one of whom is a current member of the Capital Program Committee, and representatives of the families of present and former residents of our island home. So the work group members, as you can see, have come from different directions and represent different constituencies. They brought to our meetings different expertise and different perspectives. There was a time set aside at each meeting for public input, and members of the public have been present at all of our meetings. So our report has been written to reflect input from all the work group members and from members of the public who spoke at the meetings. Our final report was approved by unanimous vote of the work group members present at the February 27th meeting. And I want to express my admiration and gratitude to all parties concerned for their contributions and for the working harmony that we achieved. At its meetings, the work group has met with representatives of the Board of Selectmen and SMRT Architects and Engineers. Work group members made a site visit to a small house facility in Western Mass, and some of the members previously visited the Florence Lennon Center for Living in Chelsea, which is a registered greenhouse facility. And then since submitting our report, we've met with Alyssa Sherman, who is the president of Leading Aged Massachusetts. So we heard her presentation about the small house model for long-term care facilities, and we presented her with questions and comments. At the work group meeting, the history of our island home and past changes of location and model of care have been reviewed, and concerns about the present proposal have been heard. Recommendations from 2007 to 2009, from 2012, 2013, and the present proposal by the Board of Selectmen and the Town Manager were devised without participation of family members, staff who provide direct care, and longtime volunteers. So our work group is the first Our Island Home work group that included residents, family members. We have not heard from the nurses and certified nursing assistants at Our Island Home. And recently, I received criticism for the fact that they had not had a representative on the work group. And I am told that there is expectation from that constituency that they will have a place in the building committee. The charge of the present work group was to resolve unaddressed and open questions before the voters of Nantucket decide whether to support warrant articles, the passages of which are required for the project to go forward. We have identified issues, but it is not within our power to resolve them. Only the Board of Selectmen and the Town Manager can address the concerns that we have heard and brought forward. Based on input to the present work group, the following issues have been identified as in need of further clarification. The cost of operation of Our Island Home in the future, potential for future privatization of Our Island Home, the concept of creating a mid-island elder care campus, multiple issues about the site located off Myacomet Road, the necessity of relocation, the future disposition of the East Creek Road site, the appropriateness of the proposed model of care specifically for Nantucket elders. A further issue brought forward is that the proposed new Our Island Home facility will have fewer beds than the present facility, 40 versus the current 45, while demographic projections suggest that in the future there will be more rather than fewer Nantucketers in need of care in an on-island residential facility. So the work group brought 6 questions to the January 11th meeting of the Board of Selectmen and made 2 recommendations concerning the warrant article specifically seeking appropriation of funds for building a new Our Island Home facility. The questions were, first, if Our Island Home were to be moved from its current location, what would happen to the current land and building? 2, upon building a new facility, will the town seek to privatize it, sell it, or merge it with Sherburne Commons? 3, will the town commit to funding for the continuing operation of a skilled nursing facility? 4, with only 40 beds to begin with, will the new facility be able to expand to more beds if needed? And will the new facility over its lifetime be adaptable to changes in community needs? 5, with regard to the model, can we commit to a more home-like atmosphere without necessarily committing to a small house or greenhouse model? So can we go forward with a flexible hybrid design to be developed by the building committee and then implement the operational plan? And our last question was, can we in depth revisit with architects and engineers the possibilities of the current location to see what could possibly be done with the current building in place? And I understand that this is exactly what we'll be hearing from in the next 5 days. So our 2 recommendations that we made in January were that the Board of Selectmen and the town manager first defer action on an appropriation by removing the request as a warrant article on the 2017 annual town meeting, pending explicit answers to our questions, and then bring it to town meeting in the fall of 2017 or to the annual town meeting in 2018. And secondly, our recommendation was to incorporate into planning a demographic survey to be carried out by the Nantucket Center for Elder Affairs under a large grant it has received for the purpose through the Community Foundation for Nantucket, and/or specific demographic information compiled by other means, and the final report of our work group. At the Board of Selectmen's meeting on January 11th, when we presented this, the board unanimously voted to postpone the warrant article seeking an appropriation of funds for the project until a future town meeting, so that these concerns could be addressed. But at the January 18 Board of Selectmen's meeting, the issue was revoted and overturned the previous week's decision by a 3-2 vote. The work group has received in writing brief answers to our questions, or concise answers to our questions from the town manager, but work group members were unsatisfied with the response to these questions. In any case, they don't appear to have been addressed in the wording of the warrant articles in the 2017 annual town meeting. So further discussion within the work group has resulted in additional recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. The first would be that there should be an independent review of the East Creek Road site for potential renovation or a new facility, and I gather that is in fact being addressed right now. And the second one was that any warrant article that seeks appropriation for a new facility should address the town of Nantucket's commitment to continue to own and operate a skilled nursing facility, guarantee non-privatization of the facility, and also guarantee that the operations of Our Island Home and Sherman Common will not be merged. So we wrote a long report It's 52 pages long. It's available in toto on the town website. When you get there, you search for Our Island Homework Group 2016, and when you get there, you go to Our Island Homework Group Final Report, which last I looked was the second item there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fran, and thank you to your entire work group for your effort, and it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Next item is committee reports.
Well, just one comment on their report. It was interesting. On Landmark House, when it was the asylum, had a locked cell in the basement.
Yes.
I'm figuring that came from your historical research.
Yes.
Is it still there?
I don't know. I hope it's converted to storage.
I'm just thinking it's a place for Bobby if they take him away tonight.
That's where they're gonna put me, Matt.
I was checking. You're leaving the select, we need to have a spot for you.
We might, I got a reserved room in the back over here.
All right, any committee reports to come before the group? Bobby?
It's not really a committee report, Mr. Chairman, but the fisheries meeting
Yeah.
that was postponed last month is scheduled for March 22nd at
Good.
11 a.m.
Great.
Here in this room.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other comments? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you.